Hello, true crime enthusiasts. Today, we will investigate another intriguing case, the case of Michael Wayne Jones. In 2019, the Jones family lived in a house next to Highway 27 in Summerfield, Florida, which is located in Marion County. The family included Father Michael, Mother Cassie, and their 4 children, Cameron, Preston, Mercalli, and Ayanna, who were between 1 and 10 years old. Cameron and Preston are Cassie's children from a previous relationship, while Mercalli and Ayanna are Michael's biological children. Michael was born on May 1, 1981 and grew up in Vermont. He had a difficult childhood marked by a poor upbringing and abuse from his father. Although his father was eventually imprisoned, his mother began a new relationship with a man who was just as abusive. When he grew up, Michael joined the United States Marine Corps as a medic. During this time, he met his first wife and became a family man, having 3 children with her. After several years of working, Michael's wife helped him get a job at a local veterinary clinic. It was there that he discovered his passion for managing a veterinary practice. During this time, he met Cassie, who had a very different background. Cassie was born on December 23, 1986, into a loving family with parents named Nikki and David, who provided her with a good upbringing. After graduating from high school, she moved to Florida in 2009. Cassie began her career in dog grooming, starting as a groomer and later becoming a veterinary technician. Friends described her as an amazing, kind, and caring person who would readily help others. Cassie and Michael first met at the veterinary clinic, which led to a significant change in their lives. Michael had a troubled past. In 2015, he was arrested for burglary after stealing money, computer equipment, and a firearm from the veterinary clinic where he worked alongside Cassie. Despite this, Cassie forgave him and supported him during this challenging period, even when he fled to New Mexico to escape arrest. Their professional relationship developed into a friendship and eventually blossomed into a romantic relationship. This prompted both of them to leave their previous partners and start a new family together. Michael became a stepfather to Cassie's 2 children, while leaving his own children with his ex-wife. Michael and Cassie welcomed their own children in December 2016 and August 2018. After marrying on Halloween in 2017, the family moved into a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom trailer in Summerfield, Florida. Although the space was limited for their family of 6, they were happy together and found the rent affordable. Cassie was a dedicated mother who prioritized her children's growth and happiness. To capture joyful moments, she created a YouTube channel to share memorable photos and videos of her children as they grew. Many of these videos showed Michael playing with his daughters, having fun with Cassie, and enjoying weekends together. He appeared calm and generally content with his life. In those moments, Cassie's laughter rang out, suggesting that their life seemed carefree and joyful. On July 10, 2019, the seemingly perfect life of Cassie began to unravel. Her friends noticed something was wrong when she stopped responding to their calls and went silent. When she eventually sent messages on social media, her friends became concerned because the messages didn't match her usual tone. The first person Cassie cut off contact with was her ex-husband, Richard Bowers, who is also the father of her sons, Preston and Cameron. On July 27, when Richard went to pick up his boys for a scheduled visit, he noticed Cassie wasn't home. When he asked Michael, who was at the house, about her, he was told she was out of town. Since Richard and Cassie had previously agreed that she wanted distance, he left with their children without any concerns. On August 1, Cassie's mother, Nikki, received a strange message from an unknown number, asking if she could care for Cassie's daughters, Mercalli and Ayanna, for a couple of weeks. Nikki agreed, but she never saw her daughter again. When Michael dropped off the children at Nikki's house, it felt unusual to her that he was the only one delivering them. especially since she hadn't heard from Casey in over 3 weeks. At this time, Michael stayed home and cared for his first 2 children with his previous wife, Sarah. On August 11, the children returned home with Sarah, while Cameron and Preston remained with Michael. Weeks went by without anyone seeing or hearing from Casey, and Michael took care of all the household chores. The situation became more concerning when it was noticed that Preston and Cameron were also missing. During this time, Michael listed twin mattresses for sale, and buyers from a nearby area expressed interest. On August 17, the buyers arrived at Michael's residence to pick up the mattresses, but the encounter was not normal. The mattresses smelled of death and Michael acted strangely, leading to a failed sale. On August 22, Richard, the biological father of Preston and Cameron, congratulated his son on his birthday, but received no response. A few days later, Casey's other children, Mercalli and Ayana, also stopped communicating. Amid these unsettling incidents, the Michael family received an eviction notice, requiring them to vacate their rental property within 2 weeks. Soon after, Hurricane Dorian made landfall in Florida and surrounding areas. The storm was so strong that it was classified as a Category 5 hurricane, and is considered the strongest hurricane to have ever made landfall in the northwestern Bahamas in recorded history. A state of emergency was declared across Florida, prompting many to seek shelter or evacuate. Michael was one of those who left the area, heading north to stay with his ex-wife, Sarah, and their children. Although Michael stayed for 10 days, Sarah never saw him contact Casey or the children. While she didn't approve of this, she was aware that Michael and Casey were experiencing problems, so she didn't intervene. After the hurricane passed and the Michael family remained away from home, neighbors reported a terrible smell emanating from their house. The homeowner was notified and knew that Michael's family had supposedly moved out. However, when he looked out the window, he saw that the house was still full of furniture and personal belongings. It was scary, and the air around the house was filled with a strong stench, like something was dead and decomposing. Initially, Casey's family and friends suspected that Michael was trying to go into hiding for legal reasons, causing the family to feel the need to go into hiding for protection. Therefore, they did not report her disappearance to the police. However, on September 14, 2014, her mother, Nikki, decided to contact the Marion County Sheriff's Office. It had been 66 days since anyone had heard from Casey, 34 days since Cameron and Preston were last seen, and 17 days since Mercalli and Ayana were last heard from. Understandably, the police were very worried and promptly began an investigation. When the police arrived at the Michael family's home around midnight, local residents informed them that no one had seen the family for a long time. They also reported a foul odor coming from the house. The police quickly identified the smell as resembling that of a decomposing body, either human or animal. Additionally, the house appeared empty but very clean, as if it had been recently tidied up. Some floorboards looked brand new, but one board had noticeable red stains. This evidence prompted the authorities to launch an investigation in search of the Michael family, but their efforts were unsuccessful. The case took a dramatic turn when, on that same day, Brandley County, Georgia, police received a disturbing report from Summerfield, located 170 miles north of the Michael family's home. Michael had crashed the family car into a concrete sewer tunnel. Although he escaped uninjured, his car was damaged beyond repair. When the police arrived, they detected a strong, repulsive odor and asked Michael about it. He reluctantly confessed to the situation. Upon searching the car, the police discovered the decomposing body of his wife, Casey. Additionally, Michael indicated where he had buried the bodies of his children. Michael was quickly arrested, and after he revealed to authorities the location of his children's burial in the woods near Highway 301 in Charlton County, a search was initiated. investigators discovered a patch of freshly disturbed soil, and to their horror, they uncovered the bodies of Cameron, Preston, Mercalli, and Ayanna. The news shocked the relatives and friends of the Casse family. Richard lost 2 sons and his ex-wife due to her relationship with Michael, while Nikki had to endure the heartbreaking task of burying her daughter and 4 grandchildren. Michael's actions had a lasting impact on the mental health of many people. One of those affected was Michael's ex-wife, Sarah. Her children had stayed at Michael's house several times after he killed Casse and were under the watch of their father, the killer. Additionally, Michael sought refuge from a hurricane at Sarah's home for several days, meaning her children were living close to him during that time. Given the brutality of Michael's actions, it is alarming to consider that he might have harmed Sarah and their other children. Fortunately, he did not, which meant that Sarah and her children were incredibly lucky. After his arrest, Michael cooperated during interrogations. He calmly answered questions without trying to mislead the police and even expressed gratitude for being caught, admitting that he felt he couldn't do anything right. He explained that his actions stemmed from a heated argument with Casse after she accused him of having an affair. Michael described how Casse lost control when she confronted him with a baseball bat and struck him. In a fit of rage, he took the bat from her and hit her several times on the head, continuing until he believed she was dead. He then placed her body in a plastic bag and hid it in a closet, cleaning up any visible blood. During this time, their 4 children were asleep in the house. Following Casse's death, Michael began fabricating stories to cover up what he had done. For weeks, he used Casse's phone to send messages to friends and family, pretending she was still alive. On August 10, 31 days after killing Casse, he decided to murder her 2 sons. He strangled Cameron and then, the following night, used zip ties to strangle Preston. As time went on, the hot and humid weather caused a serious issue. The bodies began to decompose. To mask the smell, Michael tried using cat litter, but it was ineffective. On August 23, after the deaths of his wife and 2 stepchildren, he received an eviction notice, which increased his anxiety. Unable to keep the bodies in the house any longer, he felt confused. On August 25, he took his 2 daughters to the local police station. Sitting with them on a park bench across the street, he tried to figure out how to turn himself in. However, his determination turned to discouragement, and when he got home, he revealed his sadistic side. That night, he drowned both of his daughters, Mercalli and Ayanna, in the bathtub. 2 days later, during a storm, he went to Jacksonville to visit his ex-wife Sarah, without revealing that there were 5 bodies in the trunk of his car. The bodies remained there for 16 days until he finally buried his children. At the time of their deaths, Casse was 32 years old, Cameron was 9, Preston was 4, Mercalli was 2, and Ayanna was just 11 months old. Michael Wayne Jones's trial began on December 8, 2022, and it seems unlikely that he will be released anytime soon. Because the murder of Casse was not premeditated, Michael will face charges of second-degree murder for her death. However, he will be charged with first-degree murder for the deaths of his children. Since he has already confessed to these crimes, he is likely to receive a life sentence without the possibility of parole. It's important to note that Florida still has the death penalty, and the autopsy reports presented in court revealed some tragic details. Cameron had a broken lower jaw at the time of his death, and a plastic zipper was found around Preston's neck. The remains of Mercalli and Ayanna were discovered in a small plastic bag, which also contained a bottle with a pacifier labeled with Ayanna's name, and a small pair of baby sandals. Casse's body was wrapped in a rug and a black and white shower curtain, and her skull showed damage consistent with trauma from a heavy blunt object, indicating she was likely struck rather than injured accidentally. During the trial, The defense argued that Michael should not face severe consequences for several reasons. First, they emphasized his troubled relationship with Casey, portraying her as a domineering woman. Second, they noted that Michael had used various banned substances during the incidents. Lastly, they shared his mental health history, which was rooted in a difficult childhood marked by physical abuse from his father and stepfather. Michael displayed unusual behaviors, such as hitting his head against walls and floors, to quiet the voices in his head. It's important to mention that Casey was not entirely innocent in their relationship. Her sister described her as stubborn, aggressive, and at times cruel. Michael stated that he was frequently bullied by Casey, which added to his stress. He also claimed that the actions he took against the children were meant to keep them together with their mother, as he believed they should not be separated. The doctor and clinical psychologist found evidence that Michael came from a dysfunctional family, marked by mental and physical abuse. Despite this, the prosecution showed no mercy. However, all 5 murders occurred within 49 days, indicating that Michael had ample time to regain control of his emotions. Instead, he acted with cold calculation throughout the entire incident. Michael lied many times, such as using Casey's phone to fool many people, including Sarah, and even asking her to give a false alibi. During the trial, his ex-wife Sarah said she wanted them to hang him and end it all because she thought he didn't deserve to live another day. In Florida, Michael Wayne Jones has been convicted of first-degree murder, and if the jury agrees, he could face the death penalty. The final decision rests with Judge Circuit Anthony Taddy, who has not yet scheduled a sentencing date. However, given the circumstances, the judge is expected to render a fair judgment, whether that means sentencing Michael to death or not. His actions place him among criminals deserving of the harshest punishment. Killing your wife is horrific and unforgivable, but taking the lives of 4 innocent children is so appalling that it is almost unimaginable. During Michael's trial, Casey's sister shared the deep pain she feels over the loss of her younger sister and nephews. She eventually had to leave her job because seeing the children's clothes in the store brought her to tears. Following a nervous breakdown, she was unable to get out of bed for 6 months. The thought that her nephews and niece will never graduate, marry, or have children of their own is a constant source of torment for her, often feeling overwhelming. She believes Michael deserves the verdict the jury reached, and she hopes the judge will uphold it. On Friday, April 28, 2023, at a hearing at the Marion County Judicial Center in Ocala, Judge Anthony Taddy sentenced Michael Wayne Jones to death for the murders of 4 children. He was also credited with life in prison for the death of his wife, and was given credit for 1,322 days already served while awaiting the resolution of these cases. It was a quiet evening in Dallas when Amber Geiger, a seasoned police officer, entered the wrong apartment. What happened next would send shockwaves through the community and change the course of 2 families' lives forever. But was it truly a tragic mistake, or was something darker at play? As the courtroom drama unfolded, questions about race, power, and accountability took center stage. What happened that night? Botham Shem Jean was born on September 29, 1991, in Castries, the capital of the island nation of St. Lucia. His parents, Allison and Bertram Jean, were deeply religious, they members of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Raised in such a faith-driven environment, Botham's upbringing instilled in him strong moral values, including honesty, tolerance, and a desire to help others. From a young age, Botham stood out among his peers. His parents raised him with a strong sense of responsibility, a focus on education. In school, he demonstrated exceptional abilities in mathematics and music. At a young age, Botham began singing in the church choir, where his deep and moving voice immediately caught attention. Music became an important part of his life, and the church was a place where he felt supported. After finishing school, Botham decided to continue his education in the United States. He chose to attend Harding University in Texas, where he pursued a degree in accounting. This decision marked an important milestone in his life. Moving to the U.S. opened up new opportunities for professional growth and personal connections. After graduation, Botham secured a job as an accountant in Dallas. His career quickly flourished. His colleagues highly valued his professionalism and work ethic. For Botham, working at PricewaterhouseCoopers wasn't just a career step, it was an opportunity to contribute to society and provide for his family. He supported his parents, helped the youth in his community in St. Lucia. He dreamed of advancing further in his career. His co-workers remembered him as someone who always brought positivity and inspiration to the team. But it wasn't just his professional life that mattered to Botham. He was actively involved in the life of his church in Dallas, where he was part of the music group and often spent time with friends from the community. He found joy in simple things like cooking dinners for his friends, organizing parties to maintain friendships, and support with others. His life was filled with plans for the future. Amber Geiger, on the other hand, came from a small town near Dallas. She was born on August 9, 1988, grew up in a family where discipline and hard work were strongly emphasized. From an early age, Amber dreamed of becoming a police officer. Her father worked in local law enforcement, and she knew she wanted to follow in his footsteps to help people, bring order to society. She pursued this dream after high school by enrolling in the police academy. She worked hard and demonstrated the discipline, focus needed for a career in law enforcement. After graduating from the academy, Amber began her career with the Dallas Police Department, where she eventually became an officer. Her colleagues described her as determined and hardworking, though she often expressed frustration with the emotional strain and high stress of her job. The life of a police officer is always filled with risk and stress. Amber was no exception. She often found herself in situations that required quick decisions, where her reaction had to be immediate. These working conditions took a toll on her emotional state. Over time, she became more withdrawn and cautious in her relationships with others, preferring to spend her free time alone to recharge. Amber Geiger was dedicated to her profession, but her life was full of contradictions. She tried to hide her vulnerabilities, but those who knew her well could see that she often felt lonely and sometimes even lost in the world. Despite her strong, determined character, her internal struggles and fatigue from the constant pressure made her life less stable. She would often return home late, exhausted and emotionally drained, which perhaps played a critical role in the tragic events that unfolded later. After moving to Dallas, Amber purchased an apartment in the South Side Flats complex near her job. She believed that living close to work would allow her to rest better and minimize commuting time. Although she intended for her life in Dallas to be a fresh start, it did not bring the peace she sought. Instead, work stress and emotional strain became overwhelming. It started to dominate her daily life. She frequently struggled to cope with her increasing fatigue. On September 6, 2018, Botham Jean began his day like any other. He woke up early, went to his office in downtown Dallas. It was another hectic day filled with meetings and preparing client reports. Botham was known for his dedication to his work. That day was no exception. His colleagues saw his positive attitude and the smile he spread to those around him. No one could have anticipated that this would be the last day of his life. After finishing work, Botham returned to his apartment in the South Side Flats complex in Dallas. For him, this apartment was a peaceful retreat where he could relax after a hectic day. That evening, he opted for a simple routine, cooking dinner, listening to his favorite music, and unwinding. Cooking was a beloved hobby of his, helped him manage the stress from work. On the other hand, Amber Geiger was just completing a 13-hour shift at the police station. That day had been particularly challenging, filled with calls, patrolling, and paperwork that left her completely exhausted. She felt an overwhelming fatigue that made every part of her body heavy. She just wanted to get home quickly and sleep. As soon as her shift ended, Amber rushed home, looking forward to collapsing into bed for some much-needed rest. Amber arrived at her apartment complex, where she lived on the 3rd floor. As she made her way to her apartment, she was distracted by messages on her phone, recalling her day. She accidentally took the elevator to the 4th floor instead of the 3rd. The apartment doors looked similar, and in her fatigue, she didn't realize she was at the wrong unit. She noticed that the door to Botham Jean's apartment was slightly open, which made her uneasy. Confused and tired, she feared that someone might have broken into her apartment. Amber took out her service weapon, focused only on the need to protect herself. Amber pushed the door open, stepped inside. Botham, who was in his apartment preparing dinner, heard the noise and turned to the door, feeling confused about what was occurring. Mistaking him for an intruder, Amber fired her gun twice without thinking. Botham collapsed to the floor. When Amber turned on the lights, she realized her mistake. She saw an unfamiliar man lying in a pool of blood, suddenly understood that she had entered the wrong apartment. Overcome by panic and horror, she rushed to Botham to try to help him. She called 911, urgently explaining the situation to the operator, desperately stating that she had entered the wrong apartment unit and had shot someone. Her voice shook with fear and regret as she begged Botham to hold on, repeatedly saying she hadn't intended for this to happen. While waiting for emergency services, Amber tried to stop the bleeding, but her attempts were unsuccessful. Neighbors, alarmed by the gunshots and cries, began to enter the hallway. Some called the police to report the gunfire coming from the apartment complex. When paramedics arrived, they worked to save Botham, but his injuries were too severe. He did not survive. That evening, a young man with a bright future had his life tragically cut short. After the shooting, Amber was arrested and placed in the patrol car of Dallas Police Sergeant Brianna Valentine. Sergeant Mike Mata, Valentine's superior and president of the Dallas Police Association, then approached her. He instructed Valentine to turn off the in-car camera, which recorded audio, so he could speak privately with Amber. Valentine complied with this request. During Amber's trial, Mata testified that it was standard procedure to turn off the camera to protect Amber's attorney-client privilege, as she intended to call her attorney. Amber's defense attorney supported Mata's claim, but prosecutors disagreed, arguing that turning off the camera was inappropriate and suggested that Amber received preferential treatment due to her status as a police officer. Valentine testified that she locked Amber in the patrol car to prevent her from being implicated. However, surveillance footage later showed Mata allowing Amber to exit the patrol car, conversing with her and permitting her to mingle with friends and other officers. At the time, Dallas police policy allowed officers to deactivate recording devices if they believed there would be no further evidence or law enforcement value. Botham's family and the community claimed that turning off the camera led to the loss of important evidence. Valentine stated she would not have turned off the camera had she realized Amber was off duty during the shooting. Mata denied any wrongdoing and expressed openness to an internal affairs investigation. In July 2020, prosecutors referred Mata to a grand jury for tampering with evidence, but the grand jury chose not to indict him. A spokesperson for the Dallas police stated that an internal affairs investigation into Mata's conduct would continue. As investigators collected evidence, the public started to engage in discussions about the incident. The case led to widespread outrage, particularly regarding racial issues and concerns about police misconduct. Botham Jean, being black, was viewed by many as another victim of unfair treatment and bias from law enforcement. This raised questions about whether Botham's race influenced Amber's mistaken belief that he was an intruder, which led her to shoot him without first assessing the situation. Botham's family was heartbroken by the tragedy. His mother, Allison Jean, was in St. Lucia when she received the news. It was a devastating moment for her. Her son, who had moved to the U.S. to create a better life, was killed in his own apartment. Allison started to seek justice for her son, urging both the public and authorities to conduct a thorough and fair investigation. She remembered Botham as a kind, responsible, dedicated person who never posed any threat to others. In the days after the incident, there was a surge of conflicting reports and rumors. The media provided extensive coverage. Public opinion was sharply divided. Some people felt that Amber Geiger had made a tragic error, while others believed her actions were influenced by bias and a poor assessment of the situation. This led to protests in Dallas and other cities, where demonstrators called for justice for Botham Jean and his family. Witnesses from the apartment complex reported hearing screams and gunshots. Some tried to understand what was happening, but no one anticipated such a tragic outcome. Investigators gathered evidence, reviewed surveillance footage, and analyzed witness statements to piece together the events of that day. They aimed to determine if this was truly a tragic mistake or if other factors played a role in the devastating result. After Amber's arrest, the case moved into a lengthy, complex phase of investigation and trial preparation. Amber was charged with manslaughter. Her attorneys argued that her actions were a tragic, unintentional mistake due to extreme exhaustion from a long shift. However, the prosecution asserted that Amber's behavior was unacceptable for a trained police officer who should carefully assess situations and avoid unnecessary use of force. Key evidence in the case included surveillance footage from the apartment complex where Botham Jean and Amber Geiger lived. The recordings showed Amber arriving at the building, mistakenly going to the wrong floor, and approaching Botham's apartment. Investigators highlighted that she did not pay enough attention to realize she was on the wrong floor. Additionally, phone records were significant. Just before the incident, Amber had been texting a colleague with whom she had a personal relationship. Prosecutors argued that these messages might have distracted her and led to her mistake in entering the wrong apartment. In contrast, the defense minimized the relevance of the texts, asserting that they were unrelated to the incident and could not have impacted her actions. Over several months, investigators collected evidence and interviewed witnesses. Neighbors in the apartment complex reported hearing shouting and gunshots. Some mentioned hearing voices before the shots were fired, indicating there might have been an argument between Amber and Botham. However, the witnesses had differing accounts, making it challenging to create a clear understanding of the events that took place. Forensic examinations were carried out simultaneously. Experts carefully studied the firearm involved in the shooting, the bullet's trajectory, and other physical evidence to establish the locations of Amber and Botham during the incident. A key point of debate was the position of Botham's body and the bullet's angle. The prosecution argued that the evidence indicated Botham was not a threat to Amber, whereas the defense maintained that she acted in self-defense. In September 2019, a widely publicized trial began, attracting significant attention from the public and media. The courtroom was filled with journalists, family members, and friends of Botham Jean, along with supporters of both the prosecution and defense. The case was expected to be complex, addressing issues of police responsibility, personal accountability, and racial justice. The trial commenced with opening statements from both sides. Prosecutors contended that Amber Geiger's actions were not merely a mistake, but rather a result of her negligence as a police officer. They stressed that any officer should be especially cautious when using a firearm, particularly in situations where there is no threat. Moreover, they highlighted that Botham was in his own home and did not pose any danger to Amber. The defense focused on the notion that Amber was extremely exhausted and confused, motivated by fear for her own safety. Her lawyers aimed to present her as someone who made a tragic error without any intention to harm. They also emphasized her clean record in law enforcement to gain sympathy from the jury. Over several weeks, various witnesses, experts, and family members of both the defendant and the victim shared their testimonies. A particularly emotional moment in the trial occurred when Botham's mother, Allison Jean, took the witness stand. She reminisced about her son's dreams and future aspirations, painting him as a kind, compassionate individual. Her heartfelt words resonated deeply with everyone in the courtroom, underlining the immense loss her family experienced. Botham's brother, Brant Jean, also testified, delivering a statement that became widely discussed. He publicly forgave Amber Geiger, even requested to hug her. This act elicited mixed reactions. While some viewed it as a remarkable display of kindness and forgiveness, others believed it should not overshadow the pursuit of justice. Among the evidence shown in court were surveillance video and an audio recording of Amber's 911 call made after the attack. In the recording, she sounds panicked, repeatedly saying she entered the wrong apartment and never meant to harm anyone. Expert witnesses analyzed the bullet's trajectory, the position of Botham Jean's body, and the events leading up to the shooting. Prosecution experts argued that the bullet's path indicated Botham was in a relaxed position, likely sitting or just getting up from his couch when he was shot. This contradicted the defense's claim that he was moving toward Amber and posed a threat. The defense tried to challenge these findings by saying that the bullet's trajectory could not be definitively established due to insufficient data. During the trial, the public paid close attention to the case's developments. Protests and rallies persisted, with activists demanding a fair sentence for Amber Guyger, advocating for police reform to prevent similar incidents in the future. There were widespread calls for improvements in police training, particularly in decision-making during high-pressure situations, and for greater accountability for errors that result in tragic consequences. Amber Guyger testified, sharing her perspective on the events from that night. She described returning home after a long shift, she feeling exhausted, confused. She claimed she truly thought she was in her own apartment, believed Botham was an intruder. While testifying, she became emotional and stated that she never meant to harm anyone and considered it a terrible mistake, one that she would have to live with forever. Her testimony was heartfelt and appeared genuine to some. The question of what the appropriate sentence should be became a key focus in the final stage of the trial. Prosecutors argued that Amber Guyger should be convicted of manslaughter, stating that her actions resulted in the death of an innocent person and that a police officer who cannot accurately assess a situation should not remain in the police force. In contrast, the defense sought a lighter sentence, emphasizing the absence of intent and claiming that Amber already felt immense guilt for her mistake. After several days of discussion, the jury was finally ready to deliver their verdict in Amber Guyger's case. The courtroom was filled with tension as everyone awaited the judge and jury's decision on whether the former police officer was guilty of causing Botham Jean's death. For many, this trial symbolized not just a personal tragedy but also significant issues in American society, such as racial bias, abuse of power, and a lack of accountability in law enforcement. On October 1, 2019, Amber Guyger was convicted of murder. The jury deliberated for 6 hours to return a murder verdict. The jury also considered the lesser charge of manslaughter. She is the first Dallas police officer to be convicted of murder since the 1973 killing of Santos Rodriguez. This decision surprised many, especially since the prosecution had originally aimed for a manslaughter conviction. The murder charge had more severe penalties and a longer prison sentence. In the courtroom, people expressed relief and held quiet celebrations. This verdict marked an important step toward justice for Botham's family and their supporters who endured the lengthy and difficult trial. On October 2, 2019, Amber Guyger was sentenced to 10 years in prison after a jury deliberated for an hour. In her remarks, the judge acknowledged the case's complexity and tragedy, noting that both sides had suffered significant losses. She pointed out that Guyger had made a serious mistake that resulted in an innocent person's death. Despite the weight of the sentence, many believed that 10 years was too lenient for such a grave error. While some accepted the court's decision, others felt it was inadequate. Activists and supporters of the Jean family argued that the sentence did not adequately reflect the seriousness of the crime and was insufficient punishment for the life lost. Protests continued in Dallas and other cities, with many calling for more reforms in the criminal justice and law enforcement systems. This case became a symbol of the fight for justice and highlighted the ongoing challenges Black Americans face with law enforcement. Amber Guyger was in a state of shock after the verdict and sentencing. She repeatedly insisted that she did not intend to harm anyone and that it was a tragic mistake. Her attorneys filed an appeal to reduce her sentence, arguing that 10 years was too severe for someone who acted out of confusion, stress, and exhaustion. Nevertheless, once the trial ended, Guyger was taken into custody to begin serving her sentence. Botham Jean's family expressed their gratitude to everyone who supported them during the lengthy trial. His mother, Allison, mentioned that while the verdict brought some sense of closure, it could never bring her son back. She stressed the need for systemic reforms in the justice system and law enforcement to prevent similar tragedies in the future. She continued to advocate for changes within police departments, hoping that her son's case would inspire meaningful progress. On October 16, 2019, Amber's attorneys filed an appeal requesting a new trial. On August 7, 2020, they filed another appeal, alleging that there was insufficient evidence to convict her of murder. This appeal sought to have the conviction either overturned or reduced to negligent manslaughter, accompanied by a new hearing for sentencing on the lesser charge. On January 13, 2021, the Dallas City Council voted unanimously to rename approximately 4 miles of South Lamar Street from Interstate 30 to the South Central Expressway as Botham Jean Boulevard. This street passes by Jean's former apartment building and the Dallas Police Headquarters. On August 5, 2021, the Fifth Court of Appeals of Texas upheld Amber Guyger's murder conviction, unanimously concluding that the jury's verdict was reasonable and that Amber's own testimony supported the murder conviction. On November 17 of that year, the court withdrew its earlier opinion but again upheld her murder conviction on similar grounds, stating that her defense, which claimed she had accidentally entered the wrong apartment, did not justify the lesser charge of negligent manslaughter. Her appeal to the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals, the highest court for criminal cases in the state, was denied. Simultaneously, in response to the police car camera controversy, Texas State Representative Carl O. Sherman sponsored Texas House Bill 929, known as the Botham Jean Act, to increase police accountability. The bill prohibits police from disabling body-worn cameras at any time while they are actively engaged in an investigation. It also requires law enforcement policies regarding body-worn cameras to include provisions for collecting cameras, video, and audio recordings as evidence. The bill goes into effect in September 2021. Amber is currently being held at the Patrick O'Daniel Unit, formerly the Mountain View Unit. She is eligible for release in September 2024 after serving half of her sentence, although her full sentence is effective until September 2029. Amber was subsequently denied parole in October 2024. She will be eligible for release again in 2026. On November 20, 2024, a civil trial jury awarded the Jean family $98.65 million, including approximately $60 million in punitive damages and $38.6 million in compensatory damages, in a wrongful death claim against Amber Guyger, a figure nearly double the amount the family had sought. The family said Dallas police had inadequately trained Amber and also named the city of Dallas as a defendant, but the city was dismissed from the lawsuit, leaving Amber fully liable for the damages. Amber initially represented herself but did not appear in court and declined to provide legal representation. The family said they would donate any compensation they received to the Botham Jean Foundation, which could include proceeds from any film or book deals Amber made. The family acknowledged they were unlikely to receive the full amount. The case of Botham Jean significantly influenced public perception and sparked a national debate about policing. It exemplified the systemic issues present in law enforcement, particularly regarding the treatment of Black individuals. In response to widespread public outcry, many states began to consider new laws aimed at improving police training, especially in how officers handle force and interact with the community. There were increasing demands for greater accountability for police officers and for mandatory training that emphasizes racial and cultural understanding. Furthermore, Botham Jean's case led to the formation of organizations and funds dedicated to assisting the families of victims of police misconduct, advocating for reforms in law enforcement. These groups not only provided legal and emotional support but also launched campaigns to raise awareness about racial discrimination and the misuse of power. Allison actively engaged in these initiatives, sharing her personal story to advocate for justice and systemic change. Meanwhile, Amber Guyger remained in prison, waiting for the results of her appeal. This case devastated two families and had a significant impact on American society. The tragic error that caused Botham Jean's death highlighted the urgent need for reform and emphasized the critical importance of law enforcement officials making careful, responsible decisions in life and death scenarios. The case of Botham Jean and Amber Guyger is one of the most talked about and significant cases in recent U.S. history. It highlights the serious consequences of poor judgment, especially from those in positions of authority. Many believe that justice was only partially served. The case raised important questions about equality and accountability in America. The Jansen family appeared to be a loving and supportive unit, like many other families. However, one day, everything changed dramatically. An unexpected event occurred in their home. This incident triggered a chain of events that devastated the family and shocked those around them. Law enforcement, friends, neighbors all sought to understand how this seemingly perfect family could unravel, what actually happened behind closed doors. In the dense forests of British Columbia, Randy Jansen led an ordinary life in a small town called Langley. Known for its brick storefronts and cozy coffee shops, Langley was viewed as a peaceful haven. Randy experienced years of hard work and unfulfilled dreams that often brought him unhappiness. From a young age, Randy had a strong bond with his father, who worked at a local lumber mill. His father taught him the skills of woodworking. After graduating high school, Randy followed in his father's footsteps by securing a job at the same mill. The job was tough, requiring long hours and significant physical effort, but Randy was used to hard work. In Langley, the lumber mill was seen as a vital part of the local economy and way of life. For more than 10 years, he committed himself to the challenging routine of processing wood and transporting logs. Although the work was repetitive and tiring, it provided him with stability. Each day might have seemed the same, but Randy found meaning in the rhythm of his work and his role in the community. The lumber mill represented stability in Randy's life, while music served as his escape, a way for him to express emotions he often found difficult to put into words. Since childhood, music had been important to him. Over time, playing guitar and singing shifted from being just a hobby to a crucial outlet for his feelings. Randy often performed at a local bar in Langley, where residents gathered to relax after their long workdays and enjoy live music. On stage, he transformed from his usually quiet self into an engaging and energetic performer, captivating his audience. The townspeople appreciated his heartfelt performances, which were filled with authenticity and passion. At a local bar one ordinary evening, Randy met Laurel, a woman who would profoundly impact his life. Laurel, 6 years older than Randy, worked as a bartender and often watched his performances from behind the bar. She was confident, charismatic, well loved by the patrons for her ability to create a welcoming atmosphere and her friendly demeanor. What began as casual chats about music and life quickly developed into a deeper bond. Their mutual love for music and shared aspirations brought them closer. Laurel played the piano and, although her life had taken a different path, she had always dreamed of pursuing a professional music career. This common dream, paired with genuine interest in each other, soon evolved into something much more significant. Life at the lumber mill went on as usual for Randy, but everything changed with Laurel's presence. Their relationship grew stronger as they started planning their future together. Although Langley felt familiar and comfortable, it began to seem too small for the aspirations they had. They dreamed of a life where music could be more than just a pastime. They wanted it to be the core of their future. Randy's days at the mill, his nights performing at the bar, and his evenings with Laurel filled him with a sense of purpose, love. He hoped for what lay ahead. Randy and Laurel frequently looked back on their wedding day in 1990. It was a modest ceremony with just their closest friends and family, creating a warm and intimate setting. The event featured live music, including a special song that Randy sang for Laurel, marking the start of their loving journey together. A few years later, their daughter Emily was born. She quickly became the center of their family. Randy often expressed how Emily was the best thing that ever happened to him. Anyone who knew them could see the deep love he had for her. Emily was only 8 years old when her life changed drastically. She started suffering from severe headaches that were so painful she could no longer participate in her music activities. From a young age, Emily had a natural talent for singing, which amazed her parents and earned her awards in competitions. She was living a lively life, taking vocal lessons and dreaming of becoming a singer. Her parents, encouraged by her success, did everything possible to support her dreams. Initially, Randy and Laurel struggled to understand their daughter's condition. They visited multiple doctors and underwent numerous medical tests, but none provided clear answers, leaving them confused. Emily had to leave school and start home-based learning because the bright lights and loud noises in classrooms worsened her severe headaches. Her room turned into a dim sanctuary where she spent most of her time. Randy and Laurel took turns caring for her, trying their best to alleviate her pain and offer comfort during her difficult times. After thorough medical evaluations, the doctors diagnosed Emily with migraines. This news deeply affected her entire family. The medications they prescribed provided only slight relief, easing her pain a little but never completely stopping the headaches. The music she previously cherished, which brought her so much happiness, was now unattainable. Once a vibrant and energetic young woman, Emily began to withdraw, spending most of her time in silence, darkness. Randy and Laurel were determined to find a solution for their daughter's condition. They explored numerous treatments, consulted many specialists, and looked into alternative therapies, but nothing provided the lasting relief they had been hoping for. The medical outlook was bleak. Migraines are often chronic, and many people suffer from them for life. Statistics revealed that around 53% of migraine sufferers cannot drive because of their symptoms, 30% find it difficult to finish their education, and 34% encounter issues in maintaining employment. Although these figures indicated that Emily's situation was relatively common, they offered little comfort to her parents, as they witnessed her once vibrant spirit fade. Randy went through a really tough time during these years. Music, which had once been his escape, now reminded him painfully that Emily could no longer share in the joy it brought her. Playing guitar in the evenings felt empty without her voice alongside him, and performing at the local bar, which used to be a source of joy for him, no longer felt fulfilling. He began to spend more time at home to support Emily as much as he could. However, as her condition worsened, both Randy and Laurel felt increasingly powerless. Their vibrant daughter, who was once full of life and determination, now isolated herself in her room, avoiding the world and its noise. Randy continued to work, but his thoughts were constantly with Emily. Each morning, he hoped to find a way to relieve her suffering. By the time Emily turned 18, her condition had worsened significantly. Her migraine episodes became more frequent and intense, sometimes lasting for several days. This constant pain made it difficult for her to study and maintain friendships. Despite these obstacles, Emily remained determined. She enrolled in the Fine Arts program at the University of British Columbia, aspiring to become an opera singer. For Emily, going to university was not just about academics. It was an opportunity to regain a sense of normalcy and pursue the life she had always dreamed of. Despite feeling physically exhausted and experiencing frequent pain, Emily committed herself to staying active. She took vocal lessons, learned music theory, studied art history and literature. She also participated in student events and concerts whenever possible. Her classmates admired her determination to engage in university life despite the challenges she faced. However, beneath this outward involvement, Emily was battling significant struggles. She frequently had to miss classes and catch up on her studies alone. The strong medications prescribed for her migraines left her feeling tired, drowsy, and weak. Her treatment plan included triptans, anticonvulsants, and antidepressants to help manage her symptoms. But these medications also had serious side effects, such as depression, difficulty concentrating, and a decline in her overall health. Over time, Emily chose to limit her medication intake as much as possible to lessen its effects on her body and began exploring alternative ways to manage her condition. Emily focused on meditation and breathing exercises, used cold compresses on her head, and stayed away from bright lights, strong smells, and loud noises. Her room became a safe space where she could escape anything that increased her pain. During her worst migraine episodes, she would sometimes stay in complete darkness for entire days, while her parents took turns caring for her and doing their best to alleviate her discomfort. Despite these challenges, Emily worked hard to maintain a sense of normal life. She kept in touch with her friends, even though she couldn't see them as frequently as before. Sometimes, she had to cancel plans at the last moment due to sudden migraine attacks. However, her friends remained supportive, visiting her at home and spending time with her to ensure she didn't feel alone. Despite her challenges, Emily remained committed to the things she loved. Her desire to return to music and live a fulfilling life never faltered, even as the journey became increasingly difficult. On May 7, 2015, Randy shocked everyone in his life with a Facebook post. He revealed some unimaginable actions he had taken in the prior 10 days. He started the post by expressing his love for his daughter, Emily, whom he described as an exceptional daughter, talented, intelligent, and kind. Emily brought immense joy to their family, filling their home with laughter and always willing to assist others, even while facing her own struggles. Unfortunately, Her illness had robbed her of so much, forcing her to give up dreams she had worked tirelessly to achieve. Emily had been experiencing migraines since elementary school. The persistent pain caused her to fall into deep depression, making it common for her to endure days without relief. Randy observed how his daughter watched her classmates enjoy normal lives while she spent her time in hospitals or isolated in her dark, quiet room. Despite her efforts to hope for a brighter future, nothing seemed to alleviate her suffering. Randy worked at a lumber mill, but when he wasn't working, he dedicated all his time to Emily. He often told his friends that she was his whole world and that he couldn't bear the thought of life without her. Watching her in pain and feeling powerless to help was pushing him toward despair. Friends noted how Randy shared his struggles with them, making it evident how deeply he was affected emotionally. In this Facebook post, he confessed to taking a gun and ending Emily's life, explaining that he did it to free her from her constant pain. He described his vision of her as an angel soaring above the clouds, her long hair flowing in the wind, finally at peace. But he didn't stop there. Randy also revealed that he had taken the life of his wife, Laurel, because he couldn't bear the thought of her enduring the heartbreak of losing their daughter. A few days later, he also ended the life of his sister, Shelley, claiming he wanted to spare her from the shame of his actions. In the post, Randy shared Emily's journey in her battle against illness, highlighting her incredible strength and resilience. Unfortunately, despite her efforts, the illness had taken its toll. Randy expressed his helplessness as he watched her suffer daily, knowing he couldn't change her situation. He often told friends that he would do anything to support Emily, and ultimately, he felt this was the only way to help her. At the end of his Facebook post, Randy mentioned that his family was now in a better place, free from suffering. He expressed sorrow for his actions, took full responsibility, and apologized to anyone he had hurt. The post closed with the haunting phrase, "Rest in peace, my little family." After Randy's post went live, his friends and acquaintances immediately alerted the police out of concern for Randy's family. They were shocked by the content and wanted to ensure everyone's safety. Law enforcement acted quickly after receiving several calls. Officers were sent to Randy's home to look into the matter. One of Randy's closest friends, Brian Jones, was filled with fear and confusion as he read the Facebook post. Initially, he hoped it was just a mistake or a cruel joke. However, when he saw the signature, Daddy-O, Hugs and Kisses, a nickname Randy had used since school, Brian understood that Randy had truly written those words. This left Brian in shock and disbelief. He had always seen Randy as a kind and caring person, deeply devoted to his family. The thought that his friend could commit such an act or even possess a firearm was unfathomable to him. Brian remembered how lovingly Randy spoke of his family, making it difficult for him to grasp how things had taken such a tragic turn. The seriousness of the situation struck him immediately, and he knew he needed to respond quickly. He left work early and made his way to Shelley's house, trying to call Randy as he went. Each unanswered call only increased his worry. When Brian got to Shelley's house, he saw a pile of undelivered newspapers on the porch. This was unusual because Shelley was always dependable and took her responsibility seriously. Her old van was in the driveway, the curtains were tightly shut. The yard was eerily silent, with no signs of life. Brian knocked on the door multiple times, but no one answered. The atmosphere felt unsettling and unnaturally quiet. Shelley had become a private person after her parents died. She lived by herself, had no children, and hardly spoke to her neighbors. Her primary job was delivering newspapers, and she was recognized for her reliability, punctuality. When Brian noticed the newspapers piled up without being picked up, he became worried and called the police. The dispatcher told him that he wasn't the only one worried about the family. A patrol unit was already on its way to investigate. When the police arrived, they tried to reach Randy Jansen, who was inside his house. They saw him through a second-floor window with a gun. The officers used loudspeakers and attempted to call him, but Randy did not reply. Understanding the seriousness of the situation, the officers proceeded cautiously to prevent further escalation. The house was surrounded, and negotiators began their work, but Randy did not show any intention to surrender or communicate. After several hours, the situation became much more critical. Randy set the house on fire, and officers saw smoke rising from the upper floor. They tried to get inside, but the flames spread too quickly, blocking access through the windows. Officers noticed a body wrapped in a sheet on the first floor, but they couldn't reach it to confirm its identity. Within minutes, the fire took over the entire house. When firefighters arrived, the house was fully engulfed in flames, and they could not save it. Investigators discovered 3 bodies in the charred remains of the house on Lanberis Road in Rosedale. 19-year-old Emily was found in her bedroom, wrapped in a sheet. 50-year-old Laurel was located in the kitchen, covered with a blanket. Both women had suffered 2 gunshot wounds to the head. Randy's body was located in a second-floor bedroom. He had died by suicide using a firearm and setting the house ablaze. The positioning of his body and the presence of the weapon indicated that Randy was experiencing severe emotional distress when he made the choice to end his life. When police arrived at the home of Randy's sister in Langley, British Columbia, they found her body in the living room. She had been shot twice in the head and was covered with a blanket. No signs of a struggle, indicating that Randy had likely caught her by surprise. Over the past year, Emily's health had worsened significantly. Doctors had to give her morphine injections to manage her severe pain, and these were used as a last resort. Neighbors often witnessed her parents assisting her into their home after her hospital visits. Emily was so weak that she required help to walk, which was heartbreaking for everyone who knew the family. Randy Jansen, Emily's father, dedicated himself to caring for his family despite facing numerous challenges. A year prior to the tragic events, he sought assistance from their family doctor due to ongoing insomnia and intense stress. He shared his struggles with witnessing his daughter's pain. The doctor suggested using sedatives and advised Randy to focus on getting more rest, but Randy refused the medication, feeling it wouldn't truly solve his problems. Brian noted that Randy had never indicated any thoughts of self-harm or intentions to harm others. He described Randy as a calm and hardworking individual always willing to help. Randy consistently put his family first, so no one could have anticipated he was capable of such actions. Brian observed that Randy had reached his breaking point. He could no longer endure watching his daughter suffer, which led him to make a heartbreaking decision. Neighbors who had known Randy since he was a child found it hard to reconcile this event with the kind and gentle person they remembered. They noted that he had never shown any signs of aggression or cruelty. His actions appeared to stem from a sense of desperation and an inability to cope with the immense pain affecting his family. One neighbor recalled Randy saying that if his daughter were to die, he wouldn't have a reason to live. Emily's last tweet, posted just 4 days before the tragedy, stated, "I complain about the pain, but at least I'm here to feel it. I thank God for the chance to live." In Emily's Twitter account, she wrote, "For the first time in 2 years, I've gone 12 hours without pain. I'm so tired of hurting, but I need to keep going." Her resilience was clear, despite the immense challenges she faced. This message expressed her determination to cherish life despite the significant suffering she faced. Her social media posts often reflected her struggle to stay positive in the midst of her illness, highlighting her hope even when times were tough. Emily was remembered as a kind and caring young woman who made an effort to stay connected with her community. She loved music and sang at the local church whenever her health allowed. Many residents of Langley have fond memories of her performances, but as her health declined, she was able to attend church less often. Despite her challenges, she remained generous and thoughtful, baking with her mother, sharing treats with neighbors. On her good days, she also helped local children with their homework. Laurel, Emily's mother, did everything possible to support her daughter. In a Twitter post, she expressed her feelings, saying, "Emily is back in the hospital, praying to God they can help her. I feel so helpless." These words showed the deep pain and despair she experienced while watching her daughter suffer. Although Laurel was emotionally drained, she was determined not to give up and continuously sought ways to improve Emily's condition. Similarly, Shelley, Randy's sister, could not predict the tragedy that would occur. The family never imagined their lives would be changed in such a devastating manner. Over the past year, Randy often shared with friends the heavy burden and stress he felt due to Emily's illness. No one could have predicted that he would eventually become so emotionally fragile that he would consider harming his family. Randy struggled to manage the emotional strain. Despite their shared despair, the family attempted to support one another, but their situation continued to worsen, leading to an unforeseen and tragic outcome. With the details now revealed, it is obvious that feelings of despair, hidden challenges, and deep hopelessness led to an unexpected tragedy. The story of the Jansen family serves as a sobering reminder that even within seemingly stable homes, deep pain can linger just beneath the surface, occasionally breaking out in unpredictable ways. On the evening of October 24, 2009, 58-year-old Christy Marks, a successful professional and caring mother, set out from her home filled with hope. She was on her way to reconnect with her daughter, Taylor Marks, who was 20 years old. She had been adopted by Christy years earlier. Earlier that day, Taylor had called Christy, asking her to pick her up from her boyfriend Brian Smith's house. This request was a surprising sign of reconciliation after a difficult period between them. Around 7 p.m., Christy arrived at Brian's house, located in Akron, Ohio, an area known for its high crime rates and general unease. Despite her concerns, Christy parked her car, approached the door, and knocked. Taylor answered. Christy, unable to hide her happiness, embraced her. There was no apparent tension between them. Shortly after, Brian joined them to help escort both women back to Christy's car. To Christy, everything felt normal, even though the neighborhood made her uneasy. As they were heading to the car, the situation turned dire. A man suddenly appeared behind them, wielding a knife. The attack was quick and brutal. Christy was stabbed multiple times in the chest and face before she could defend herself and collapsed on the ground. Taylor screamed, hurried to call emergency services. In the recording of her call, she was heard pleading for help and explaining that her mother had been attacked. While she was on the phone with the dispatcher, Brian took the phone from her. He calmly provided their location and described what happened, stating that the attacker had fled, though his calm demeanor was unsettling given the violent situation. Paramedics arrived within minutes. Christy was alive but in critical condition and was rushed to the hospital, where doctors worked hard to save her. Unfortunately, despite their efforts, Christy Marks was pronounced dead shortly after arriving. The main cause of death was the multiple stab wounds inflicted with great force. At the crime scene, law enforcement noticed several discrepancies. Christy's purse, which contained her belongings, cash, keys, and documents, was found untouched near where the attack occurred. This was unusual for a robbery. Additionally, a bloody knife, believed to be the weapon used, was found in nearby bushes. These discoveries raised doubts about the witnesses' accounts and hinted at potential deeper motives for the crime. The police started questioning everyone involved: Taylor, Brian, and Brian's friend, Troy Purdy II, who had been in the house during the attack. Their stories were inconsistent and contradictory. Taylor reported only seeing the silhouette of the attacker, describing someone in red sneakers and a flannel shirt. Brian claimed he tried to intervene and got injured during the struggle with the assailant, while Troy maintained he never left the house and saw nothing. Given their statements, investigators soon suspected that none of them were being truthful. Evidence from the crime scene, such as blood trails and the positioning of the weapon, indicated that the crime was staged. Authorities thought the attack was not random, it appeared to be well planned. During the first night of the investigation, detectives focused on one critical question: why was Christy targeted, and which of the people present knew the truth about what happened? Taylor Marks was born on March 29, 1989. Her biological mother chose to place her into foster care right after her birth, leaving her under the care of the adoption system. Little is known about her biological family, except that Taylor has at least one older sibling, although she was the only one placed in foster care. This marked the start of a new chapter in her life, one that, despite its difficult beginnings, eventually brought her warmth and love. A few months later, Taylor joined the Marks family. Bruce and Christy Marks, a couple who had always dreamed of having a child but were unable to conceive, felt she was destined to be part of their family the moment they first saw her. At that time, the Marks family was financially secure. Bruce worked in a senior role at a major telecommunications company, while Christy efficiently managed their home life and family activities. They had a large, supportive extended family that included grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins who all loved, cared for Taylor. Bruce and Christy were committed to her upbringing, providing her with a high-quality education at prestigious private schools, enrolling her in dance classes, and encouraging her involvement in various extracurricular activities. As a result, Taylor had access to opportunities that many of her peers did not. Taylor had a particularly strong bond with Bruce, who was seen by family friends as her hero, always fulfilling her wishes and offering unwavering support. In contrast, her relationship with Christy was more challenging. Christy was stricter and had higher expectations. While these differing parenting styles did not create major problems during Taylor's early years, tensions began to rise as she entered her teenage years. Christy's increasing oversight and demands led to frequent conflicts between them, causing strain in their relationship. During this time, when Taylor was around 10 years old, Bruce and Christy experienced marital problems, ultimately resulting in their divorce. Taylor reported that her parents' separation had a significant emotional impact on her. She felt that Christy started directing her frustrations towards Taylor, worsening their relationship. A significant turning point in Taylor's life occurred in 2002 when she was only 13 years old. Her father, Bruce, unexpectedly passed away after falling into a diabetic coma. This loss was extremely painful for Taylor, as she not only lost her father but also her main source of emotional support. Shortly after Bruce's death, her grandfather, with whom she was very close, also passed away. These two losses deeply affected Taylor. Following Bruce's death, Christy inherited a large estate, including a considerable amount of money. She decided to use part of this inheritance to buy a new home in Akron, Ohio, hoping that a change of environment would help them start anew. However, despite this move, Taylor's emotional well-being worsened. She became more isolated, struggled academically, and had increasing conflicts with Christy. Christy wanted to support her daughter, but her approach often felt too controlling. To make up for the loss of Bruce, she tried to provide Taylor with material comforts, going out of her way to give her everything she wanted and more. Despite this, their emotional bond continued to weaken. Christy wished for Taylor to take responsibility, complete her education, and eventually continue the family legacy. However, Taylor was uninterested in these plans, instead dreaming of breaking free from what she perceived as imposed expectations. As Taylor entered her teenage years, her desire for independence conflicted with her mother's expectations, leading to increasing arguments that intensified over time. Taylor saw her mother as a constant source of pressure, and tensions rose each year. Concerned about her daughter's falling grades, Taylor's lack of focus in school, and apparent disregard for her future, Christy attempted to enforce strict rules to guide Taylor in what she believed was the right path. Taylor perceived her mother's actions as a way to control her life, which made her want to rebel even more. Christy's constant comments about Taylor's looks, clothing choices, and friends further strained their relationship. High school was especially tough for Taylor. Even with the privileges her mother provided, she started using them carelessly. Rather than concentrating on her studies, she chose to hang out with friends, ignoring Christy's efforts to keep her disciplined. Although Christy tried different approaches to guide her daughter, these attempts only pushed them further apart. In 2008, Taylor graduated from high school. A significant turning point occurred. Although Christy offered financial support and opportunities for Taylor to attend any college, Taylor was not interested in furthering her education. Christy encouraged her to at least give it a try, which led Taylor to enroll at a university in Akron. However, just a month into her first semester, she decided to drop out. This choice was devastating for Christy, highlighting the growing divide between their visions for Taylor's future. When persuasion failed, Christy opted for a more direct approach. She presented Taylor with an ultimatum: either find the job and support herself or move out of the house. This expectation aligned with American cultural norms, where young adults are urged to take responsibility for their lives as they reach adulthood. Unfortunately, Taylor interpreted her mother's words as harsh and threatening, escalating the conflict between them. The situation worsened in May 2009 when Taylor met Brian Smith, a 21-year-old known for his rebellious nature. Brian lived with his mother and sister in a low-income neighborhood. Taylor was attracted to him, viewing him as a way to break free from her mother's control. People who knew Brian warned that he had a bad temper and needed to dominate his relationships, but Taylor had no change of mind. Christy disapproved of the relationship, worried about Brian's behavior and its potential impact on her daughter. She tried to stop Taylor from seeing him and even forbade him from visiting their home, but this only made Taylor more determined to pursue the relationship. Soon after, Taylor moved in with Brian, leaving her mother's house behind. However, life with Brian was not as she had hoped. Initially, their relationship appeared promising, but it quickly became evident that Brian was controlling and aggressive. Taylor dealt with jealousy, control, and frequent bursts of anger from him. Even so, she refused to return home, seeing it as a sign of weakness. Concerned for Taylor's well-being, Christy continued to support her by providing essential items and staying in touch, hoping that Taylor would come to realize her mistakes. The tension between Christy and Taylor reached a peak when Christy offered Taylor a chance to return home. She could come back if she either continued her education or found a job. To help her, Christy also offered to provide a car, an apartment, and a job at her company. However, Taylor showed little interest in these options. Despite the challenges, her tumultuous relationship with Brian continued. Christy hoped that, in time, Taylor would realize her mistakes and return home to take on more responsibilities. Sadly, this hope would never materialize. As the years passed, the rift in their relationship widened, leading to a tragic outcome. When Taylor moved in with Brian, she thought she was gaining the freedom she had long desired. However, this freedom quickly turned into a series of restrictions. Life with Brian was very different from what she had expected. He enforced strict rules and scrutinized every aspect of her life. Taylor, who was used to a certain degree of comfort and independence, found herself in a situation where she had to obey Brian's demands. Brian's control over Taylor grew increasingly extreme. He frequently checked her phone, read her text messages, and closely monitored where she went. Even her conversations with Christy became a source of conflict. Brian persuaded Taylor that her mother was trying to manipulate her and limit her independence. His influence intensified the rift between Taylor and Christy, who kept trying to stay in touch and maintain their communication. In Brian's home, Taylor felt completely isolated. He not only limited her social interactions but also manipulated her emotions, making her believe he was the only one who truly understood her. During arguments, Brian exhibited aggressive behavior, breaking things and making threats. After these outbursts, he demanded her total loyalty and constantly reminded her of how much she depended on him. The situation was made worse by Brian's family. His mother, Tammy, chose not to intervene, effectively supporting Brian's behavior. His younger sister also contributed to controlling Taylor by watching her closely when Brian was not around, creating an environment where Taylor's every action was monitored. Taylor's financial ties to her mother were another significant issue in her relationship with Brian. Knowing about Christy's wealth and Taylor's potential inheritance, Brian was determined to keep control over her. He often blamed her mother for her problems, driving a wedge between them. Under Brian's influence, Taylor started avoiding her mother. Even when Christy came to help her daughter, Brian stayed distant and dismissive, discouraging Taylor from accepting her mother's support, insisting they could manage on their own. Despite Brian's efforts, Christy continued to care for Taylor, providing her with necessities and encouraging her to return home. By the summer of 2009, the tension between Taylor, Brian, and Christy had intensified. After months of living with Brian, Taylor had become completely reliant on him. As Brian's control grew and his aggression escalated, a new plan emerged, something that initially felt unlikely but quickly became more tangible. This idea was driven by increasing pressure, shared dissatisfaction, and financial motivations. The plan was to eliminate Christy permanently, which would give them access to her assets. For Taylor, this was a way to cut her last connections to her mother and achieve financial independence. For Brian, it was a chance to secure his control over Taylor and use her inheritance to improve his own situation. The idea of committing a crime started to spread among their close friends. Brian's 19-year-old friend, Troy Purdy, who often visited their home, joined these discussions. Being younger and impressionable, Troy was seen as the perfect choice for the plan. What began as jokes or hypothetical situations eventually grew more serious. The planning took place gradually, with careful attention to detail. Brian and Taylor discussed how to make the crime appear as if it were a robbery or a random attack. They decided that any evidence left at the scene should suggest spontaneous violence rather than a planned crime. Troy was selected to carry out the act to keep Brian and Taylor from being directly linked to it. Troy agreed to participate because of his loyalty to Brian and didn't question the plan when asked. In return for his involvement, Troy was promised $5,000, which Taylor expected to come from her inheritance once the legal matters were settled. They paid special attention to choosing a weapon. Taylor mentioned that Brian's mother, Tammy, even bought a knife for the plan, but it was later rejected due to its size and weight. Eventually, Troy was tasked with finding a suitable weapon. He chose a lightweight knife that was easy to hide and carry. A crucial part of their preparation was observing Christie's habits. They knew Christie frequently visited Brian's house to see Taylor, making her an easy target since she usually came alone under the pretense of picking up her daughter. This detail was included in their plan. They envisioned Christie arriving at the house, and the attack happening as she was leaving or near her car. Just before the plan was implemented, Taylor took a crucial step to ensure everything would go smoothly. She called her mother and asked for a ride home, implying she wanted to return. This call was intended to put Christie at ease, making her less suspicious about Taylor's true intentions. Throughout their discussions, Taylor appeared confident and committed. According to Troy, she was not just involved in planning but was also determined to follow through. Although her relationship with her mother was strained, taking such a significant action was a big deal. Taylor explained her involvement by referring to years of resentment and a strong desire to break free from her mother's control. Meanwhile, Brian kept the process on track, persuading Taylor that this was the only way to solve her issues. By the evening of October 24, 2009, everything was in place. Taylor was aware that the plan was shifting from theory to action. Taylor remained calm and focused, convinced this was the best way forward for them. For Taylor and Brian, it represented the start of a new chapter in their lives. That day began as an ordinary day for Christie Marks but ended in tragedy. That evening, Taylor called her mother to say she wanted to come home. For Christie, this unexpected phone call brought joy after months of tension. She viewed it as a chance to reconnect with her daughter. Christie quickly packed her things, got in her car, and drove to Brian's house, unaware that she was heading into a carefully orchestrated crime. Christie arrived at around 7 p.m. and parked her car near the house. She walked to the front door, where Taylor welcomed her with a smile and a hug, signaling a potential reconciliation. Brian watched from a distance as they interacted, while Troy stayed inside to avoid raising any suspicion. As Christie and Taylor walked toward the car, with Brian following closely behind, everything seemed normal. However, everything changed when they reached the car. Troy suddenly emerged from the house with a knife and attacked Christie. She had no time to react as Troy stabbed her multiple times in the chest and face. The assault was quick and brutal, leaving Christie unable to defend herself. She collapsed to the ground with over 10 stab wounds. This was not a robbery, it was a targeted attack intended to kill her. Taylor stood nearby, observing the attack unfold. Later, she claimed she didn't intervene because she was scared of Troy, but surveillance footage revealed that she showed no signs of panic or distress. Brian also did not intervene, insisting that his role was to protect the women, yet he took no action to stop Troy. After the attack, Taylor called emergency services, her voice tense as she urgently requested an ambulance. Brian then took over the call, acting as the coordinator. He calmly provided the dispatcher with details about their location and the type of assistance required. His unemotional tone raised suspicions among law enforcement officials who later listened to the call. Troy, the attacker, discarded the knife in a nearby bush and fled the scene. He later claimed that he had acted out of emotional distress, but evidence suggested his actions were premeditated. Following Christy Marks's tragic death, the investigation started right away. Police arrived at the scene within minutes of the emergency call. They found evidence that raised immediate doubts: a knife hidden in the bushes, Christie's purse untouched with all her belongings, and no signs of robbery. These details did not support the theory of a random attack. Investigators began by interviewing the main individuals involved: Taylor, Brian, and Troy. They were interviewed separately to avoid any possibility of collaboration. However, their stories did not match and raised suspicions as the police noticed inconsistencies in their statements. The crucial evidence was obtained from surveillance footage near the crime scene. The video showed Taylor and Brian standing close by while Troy attacked Christy. Neither of them attempted to stop the assault. This footage became a pivotal element in the investigation. With this evidence, detectives brought the suspects back for additional questioning. Under the strain of the evidence presented, Troy was the first to confess. He stated that the attack was planned in advance, claimed that Taylor had orchestrated the scheme. Troy explained that she had approached him and Brian with the plan, assuring them of a financial reward from her expected inheritance after her mother's death. Troy admitted that his role was to carry out the attack while Brian was tasked with creating an alibi by making it look like a robbery. He also confessed to intentionally injuring Brian to strengthen the staged scenario's credibility. His admission completely contradicted Taylor's earlier assertion that the attack was random. When Brian heard about Troy's confession, he changed his story as well. He supported Troy's claim that Taylor had come up with the plan but denied being actively involved. Brian stated that while he didn't agree with the attack, he felt he couldn't stop Taylor and Troy. He also claimed he didn't know the full details of the plan until the last moment, which appeared to minimize his involvement. Faced with growing evidence and accusations, Taylor initially denied her participation. However, her account became more inconsistent over time. Investigators observed that she started contradicting herself, and her behavior indicated she was trying to conceal the truth. Eventually, under the pressure of the evidence, Taylor admitted to discussing the plan with Brian and Troy. The investigation revealed that the crime was carefully planned, with every detail considered, from selecting the weapon to staging fake injuries. The financial motive mentioned by both Troy and Brian became a key focus for the prosecution. Taylor confessed that her ongoing conflict with her mother influenced her decision, but she maintained that she didn't expect the situation to end in tragedy. The police quickly understood what had occurred. Taylor Marks, Brian Smith, and Troy Purdy were arrested and charged in connection with Christy Marks's death. While this marked the end of the initial investigation phase, the legal proceedings were just beginning. The court would assess their levels of responsibility and determine their sentences. The trial for Christy Marks's case started in late 2009. The defendants faced intense public attention due to the violent nature of the crime and their connections to the victim. The prosecution presented a strong case supported by extensive evidence, witness testimonies, and video recordings. A key piece of evidence was the surveillance footage showing Taylor and Brian standing by without attempting to intervene during the attack on Christy. Moreover, Troy's confession, which detailed the conspiracy and his involvement in the crime, played a crucial role in the case. Investigators shared text messages from Taylor's phone where she discussed her troubled relationship with her mother and her wish to be independent. They also uncovered evidence of a financial motive, noting that Taylor was set to inherit a significant sum after Christy's death. Christy possessed considerable assets, including real estate, a business, and savings. Defense attorneys for Taylor, Brian, and Troy tried to argue that their clients were not fully responsible for the crime. Taylor's lawyer insisted that she was heavily influenced by Brian and lacked the ability to act on her own. He attributed her vulnerability to the emotional turmoil following her father's death and the pressure from her mother. Brian claimed he had no direct role in the crime, with his lawyer stating he was shocked and unaware of the plan until it unfolded, preventing him from intervening. Meanwhile, Troy, who initially confessed, tried to alter his story during the trial, asserting that he acted under Brian's coercion. During the proceedings, Troy accepted a plea deal to admit his guilt and testify against the others, resulting in a life sentence without parole, which spared him from the death penalty. Realizing her situation was dire, Taylor also pleaded guilty during the hearings. She gave a heartfelt statement where she expressed regret for her actions, explaining that her conflicts with her mother and the influence of Brian led her to take part in the crime. However, the prosecutors insisted that her involvement was intentional and well-planned. Brian, on the other hand, initially claimed he was not guilty but later acknowledged his role when presented with undeniable evidence. He argued that his participation was minor and that he never meant for the crime to happen, but the court saw this as an effort to minimize his accountability. In 2010, the court issued its verdicts. Taylor Marks and Brian Smith were convicted of first-degree murder and conspiracy, resulting in life sentences without the possibility of parole. Although Taylor expressed remorse, her statement about losing control was viewed as an attempt to reduce her sentence. Troy, under the terms of his plea deal, also received a life sentence. However, his subsequent behavior in prison became concerning when he was charged in 2015 for possessing a weapon, which raised concerns about his ability to rehabilitate. The sentencing had a profound impact on everyone involved in the tragedy. This situation serves as a stark reminder of how personal conflicts and impulsive choices can ruin even the strongest bonds. Taylor then was relocated to a women's correctional facility in Ohio. Throughout her early years in prison, she remained isolated, choosing to avoid interaction with the media and other inmates. In 2021, Taylor participated in a television interview regarding her case. During the interview, she acknowledged that her actions were serious but continued to justify them by discussing her conflicts with her mother and her emotional struggles. Although she had previously expressed remorse in court, Taylor reiterated her criticisms of her mother, calling her strict and unsupportive after her father's death. She also expressed a desire for her case to be reviewed, hoping for a chance at freedom. These statements caused controversy, with many perceiving them as indications of insincerity. Currently, Taylor spends her time involved in rehabilitation programs and working within the prison. Some view her as manipulative and insincere, while others believe she is seeking meaning in her life while incarcerated. Meanwhile, Brian, who is also serving a life sentence in a high-security prison, has kept a low profile since his conviction. He has avoided media interviews and has not publicly addressed his involvement in the crime. Prison staff describe Brian as a difficult inmate who often engages in conflicts and displays aggression. His name came up again in 2017 when reports revealed he had gotten into a fight with another inmate. This incident highlighted that his aggressive behavior had not improved since his sentencing. Like Taylor, Brian symbolizes the tragic inability to accept responsibility and the harmful impact one person can have on others. Troy, who played a direct role in the crime, was also sent to a maximum security prison. Even though he received a plea deal, his conduct in prison showed he hadn't changed. Since the incident, Troy has seldom been covered in the media. While some viewed his involvement in the crime as a result of being manipulated by Brian and Taylor, his readiness to carry out the fatal attacks raised concerns about his potential for rehabilitation. The memory of Christy Marks endures among her friends and surviving family. Her senior care business was sold after her death, with part of the proceeds going to charities that support victims of domestic violence. Christy is often remembered by her loved ones as a strong and compassionate woman who devoted her life to helping others. Years after Christy's passing, her story remains a warning about the need for open communication in families and the value of seeking professional help when conflicts escalate. On March 1, 2019, it was a chilly Friday evening in Harold Hill. Amy's Park, a popular local spot, was filled with the usual crowd of teenagers unwinding after a busy week. 17-year-old Jody Chesney, an energetic student, was at the center of it all. She sat with her boyfriend, Eddie Coyle, and a group of 5 friends on a picnic bench, enjoying their time together as laughter mixed with the sounds from a portable speaker. As the clock approached 9:25 p.m., the atmosphere in Amy's Park changed. Earlier, around 9 p.m., Jody's group had noticed 2 people hanging around, but they didn't think much of it since strangers often visit parks. The 2 left quietly and disappeared into the night. However, about 30 minutes later, they returned, but this time, they weren't just passing by. The two figures approached Jody's group deliberately, moving swiftly through the darkness. Without any warning or conversation, one of them suddenly attacked. Screams echoed through the air as Eddie caught her when she collapsed, leaving her friends in shock. Unfortunately, despite the paramedics' efforts, they couldn't save her. Metropolitan Police have sealed off the park and launched a murder investigation. Harold Hill was not known for such incidents. While London did face issues with knife crime, Amy's Park was considered a safe haven for children. Neighbors placed flowers and written tributes at the park's entrance. Purple ribbons, Jody's favorite color, were tied to fences. The police pledged to find answers, but time was of the essence. Each hour without a lead made the investigation more difficult. First, let's explore Jody's life. After her parents separated when Jody was 6, her father, Peter, became a devoted single parent to Jody and her older sister, Lucy. Their home was filled with love, despite the challenges they faced. Peter described Jody as an affectionate child who sought connection but was also quite shy. However, she gradually flourished, largely due to the support of a primary school teacher who helped her gain confidence. In 2012, when Jody was 10, Peter married Joanne, who willingly embraced her role as stepmother. Jody and Joanne developed a close bond that Jody treasured. Joanne noted that Jody longing for the maternal connection she missed, and together they worked to nurture that relationship. Jody's home was filled with laughter, thanks to her playful sense of humor. Joanne often referred to her as a wind-up toy because of her boundless energy that brightened their days. Jody's teenage years were largely shaped by her dedication to the Girl Scouts. She poured herself into the program, burning badges, hiking up mountains, and canoeing with her troop. In addition to her scouting achievements, she was a self-taught pianist who effortlessly played the piano. She was also just 3 weeks away from completing her Gold Duke of Edinburgh Award. At Havering's Sixth Form College, where she studied photography, psychology, and sociology, her principal praised her as an excellent, hard-working, and focused student. Jody aspired to work with animals or children and was determined to make a positive impact in the world. Her friends remembered her for her ability to make them laugh. Her sense of humor blossomed when she overcame her childhood shyness. Jody's relationship with her sister Lucy was incredibly strong. Even with 2 years between them, they shared everything: secrets, laughter, and aspirations. Lucy saw Jody as her other half, someone who always prioritized others' needs. Their home in Dagenham was a welcoming place for Jody's friends, who were drawn to her warmth. She had no enemies and had a special talent for making everyone feel included. Even her dog was part of her life. Jody enjoyed taking him for walks, which provided a sense of stability amid her busy schedule. On March 1, 2019, Jody's day began like any other. It was a Friday, and she woke up in her Dagenham home with her dad Peter, stepmom Joanne, and sister Lucy. Jody was excited not only for the weekend but also for her dad's upcoming birthday. She had been discussing gift ideas with Joanne, eager to find the perfect present to make Peter smile. At 8 a.m., she shared a heartfelt message on Instagram, "Happy birthday, Dad," accompanied by a heart emoji. This post would later deeply affect those who viewed it, gathering many comments following her death. Jody spent her morning at Havering's Sixth Form College, where she was in her second year of A-levels. After her classes ended around 3 p.m., she left college with her backpack over one shoulder, looking forward to the weekend ahead. Back in Dagenham, Jody had one last thing to do before her evening plans. She took Dog, the family's Yorkshire Terrier, for a walk, a routine that she cherished. By 4:30 p.m., she was back home, catching up with Joanne and Peter, who were preparing to celebrate Peter's birthday. Jody mentioned that she would be spending time with friends later, which was a typical Friday night for her. Jody grabbed her jacket, said her goodbyes, and left around 5:30 p.m., promising to return later. She made her way to Romford railway station, a quick bus ride away, to meet her boyfriend, Eddie, and a group of friends. By 6:30 p.m., the group of 6 teens, including Eddie, had gathered and were animatedly discussing their plans for the evening. Their gathering was recorded by surveillance cameras. Romford was their usual hangout, a popular spot for East London teens, filled with shops and fast food restaurants. That night, however, they decided to go to Amy's Park in Harold Hill, about a mile from Havering College, another favorite spot for them. The park featured a playground in the center and benches where teens would gather after dark. By 7:30 p.m., they were settled on a picnic bench, playing music from a portable speaker, just the kind of relaxed night Jody enjoyed. They had a great time together. At around 9 p.m., Jody's group spotted two figures in the park. They didn't seem unusual since Amy's Park is a public area where people come and go. The two stayed for a short time but left without engaging with anyone, disappearing into the night. Jody and her friends paid them no mind, enjoying their music and conversation. However, at 9:20 p.m., the same two figures returned, this time moving with a noticeable intent. According to police reports from the Metropolitan Police, they approached Jody's group directly, cutting through the darkness. One figure was dressed in dark clothing, and his face was hidden. The other figure was less clear, appearing as a shadow beside him. Without warning, the first attacker stabbed Jody in the back with such force that the knife broke, causing a severe 7-inch wound that collapsed her lung. Chaos erupted in the park. Eddie's scream shattered the night, and her friends stood frozen in shock. Eddie caught her as she fell, holding her on the ground and desperately calling for help. The two attackers quickly disappeared into the darkness. In a panic, Eddie called emergency services, urgency in his voice as he pleaded for an ambulance. Nearby residents were alerted by the screams. A woman began CPR, not realizing that the broken knife was still lodged in Jody's back. A man in a van stopped to assist, applying his coat to the wound, while another friend to help stop the bleeding. Paramedics arrived within minutes, but Jody's injuries were severe. Despite their efforts, she was declared dead at 10:26 p.m., just over an hour after the attack. Amy's Park was turned into a crime scene, marked off by police tape as forensic teams searched for evidence. Jody's friends, still in shock, told the police there was no argument or warning, just a sudden, unprovoked attack. The Metropolitan Police's homicide and major crime team took control of the investigation, with Acting Detective Chief Superintendent promising to find those responsible. As the investigation progressed, detectives focused on Jody's last hours, using witness accounts and phone records to confirm her movements. A key moment in the case came when a local man contacted the police. He reported seeing two men run out of the park on the night of Jody's attack and get into a black Vauxhall Corsa before driving away quickly. The witness also mentioned that there was at least one other person in the car, the driver. CCTV footage played a crucial role in the investigation. The streets of Harold Hill, equipped with various cameras, provided a collection of unclear images. By March 2nd, police had reviewed footage from St. Neots Road and nearby Retford Road, showing two males leaving Amy's Park around 9:25 p.m. One wore a dark jacket with a noticeable pattern, while the other wore a hoodie that covered his face. On March 3rd, the police arrested 20-year-old Manuel Petrovich. The black Vauxhall seen at the crime scene was registered to him. Petrovich denied being involved in Jody's murder, claiming that his car had been stolen during a robbery at knife point. However, he later acknowledged that he owned the Vauxhall and had a mobile phone he used for selling cannabis. He refused to identify anyone he was with that night because he was concerned for his own safety and his family's safety, stating that people had already come to his house looking for him. During further questioning, he described the events of the night Jody died but referred to the attackers as Man A and Man B out of fear. Petrovich explained that on March 1st, he was with a friend who received a call from Man A asking for a ride. They picked up Man A and another person, Man B, and drove to Harold Hill for Man A to collect some cannabis and money. According to him, Man A and Man B got out of the car at Harold Hill, leaving Petrovich and his friend inside. He said the two men were away for about 5 minutes and seemed calm when they returned, noting that there was nothing unusual about their behavior. He stated, "Nothing about them made me suspicious. I did not see either of them carrying anything. My friend and I were told that Man A was collecting money and banned substance." After dropping off the two men, Petrovich claimed that a black male threatened him with a knife and took his car keys. He said that the next day, He heard about a girl who was stabbed in Harold Hill and hoped it wasn't related to his earlier encounter with Man A and Man B. Detectives identified a second suspect, a 19-year-old known to frequent the Harold Hill drug scene, based on witness descriptions of a black male in his late teens. To keep him from knowing he was a suspect, police kept his name confidential, referring to him as Suspect A in initial reports. The investigation continued to grow. A woman in her 40s who lives across the street from Amy's Park reported seeing suspicious individuals coming and going for weeks, especially at night. She also noted a young teenager who resembled Suspect B, suggesting he was running errands for older men. These accounts indicate a possible connection to banned substance activity, as there is a known issue with cannabis in Harold Hill, often involving teens as runners. Detectives believe Jody's group may have been mistaken for rival banned substance dealers. Although Jody has a clean record and no known ties to banned substance, this complicates the investigation. By March 10, 9 days after Jody's death, the police were making significant progress. Acting on a tip, officers from the Metropolitan Police's Homicide and Major Crime Command focused on a house on Rogers Road in Dagenham, connected to Aaron Isaacs' uncle. They believed Svensson, referred to as Man A, and Isaacs, known as Man B, were hiding there after the attack. At 7 p.m., armed officers surrounded the location, with body cameras recording. In a dramatic turn of events, 19-year-old Svensson Ong-Akwai tried to escape by climbing over a rear flat roof but fell through a conservatory, shattering glass everywhere. A policeman approached and handcuffed him. Svensson's phone had texts linking him to Petrovich and discussing business in Amy's Park. When officers searched his home, they found a jacket that matched one seen in CCTV footage, with traces of Jody's blood on it. Meanwhile, 17-year-old Aaron Isaacs attempted to escape through a window but was caught in the back garden, where he had discarded a rucksack containing a large knife, 2 toothbrushes, and hair mousse, an unusual combination that raised suspicion. The police didn't stop there. They also arrested a 16-year-old boy, a friend of Manuel Petrovich, whose name was withheld for legal reasons, on suspicion of involvement in the crime. The police were casting a wide net, recognizing that Harold Hill's banned substance scene involved numerous runners and dealers. By May, all 4 individuals were facing charges. Svensson and Aaron were charged with murder, while Petrovich and the 16-year-old were charged with murder and manslaughter. Svensson was born on March 29, 2000, grew up in Harold Hill, near Amy's Park. He was raised by his mother and has 4 sisters. His childhood was troubled, primarily due to his father. In 2017, Svensson was kicked out of his home for disrespectful behavior and subsequently lived in a social services hostel in Romford. He described himself as a boxer hoping to become a professional. However, Svensson has criminal convictions for possessing and supplying cannabis and other banned substances. Transporting banned substance between London and rural areas, a risky environment where violence was common. In 2018, he violated a 6-week suspended sentence related to handling stolen jewelry. During the interrogation, Svensson remained calm. He acknowledged being in Amy's Park but insisted he was only there to pick up cannabis. He denied stabbing Jody and instead accused Aaron of being responsible for the attack. Aaron, born on January 27, 2002, faced many challenges from a young age. He lived in a flat with his mother and brother. His childhood as troubled. His mother dealt with mental health issues, and he had been in contact with children's services since he was 4 years old. Aaron's criminal record included offenses such as carrying a screwdriver, causing bodily harm, possessing cannabis, and stealing a vehicle. When he was detained, he was uncooperative, even throwing a rucksack that contained a knife during his arrest. During questioning, he claimed he was simply hanging out with Svensson and insisted he had no knowledge of the knife. He told the detectives that he didn't touch Jody's, blaming Svensson for the attack and saying he ran away out of fear. Manuel Petrovich, the suspected driver, is a 20-year-old local from Romford with connections to banned substance circles. Although not much is known about his background, he was considered a trusted associate of Svensson and frequently lent his car for various operations. In a leaked prison conversation that prosecutors received, Petrovich acknowledged that Svensson had been planning activities in Amy's park and mentioned that they had set him up a couple of months prior. He stated that he remained in the car and did not learn about the attack's outcome until later. Petrovich denied the murder charges, asserting that he was unaware Jody was the target and had no intention to cause harm. He explained that Jody's group was mistakenly identified as the intended targets, as they were in the same area. They went to confront their rivals but ended up attacking the wrong people, he told a friend, not realizing he was being recorded. Anticipating arrest, Svensson took extreme measures to hide his actions. He burned his clothes after the attack, except for his jacket. Aaron also disposed of his clothes, and both men fled to Dagenham in an attempt to escape the police. During their interrogations, they played a blame game, each pointing fingers at the other. Svensson claimed he was only a lookout, while Aaron argued he wasn't involved in the plan. However, the evidence against them grew: the blood-stained jacket, phone records indicating they had conspired together, and CCTV footage showing them at the crime scene. As the formal charges were laid out, the community in Harold Hill struggled to understand the senseless motives behind the crime. Jody, a Girl Scout who had no ties to banned substance, became an unwitting victim in a conflict she was unaware of. While the arrests brought some relief, they did not provide closure. Jody's family, especially her father Peter, wanted justice. Peter established the Jody Chesney Foundation, a charity aimed at diverting young people from knife crime. The foundation's website described Jody as a kind person who accepted everyone. Purple ribbons emerged as symbols of her memory, with vigils and scouting events celebrating her compassion. Jody's legacy reached beyond Harold Hill, igniting national discussions about knife crime. The foundation supported youth programs, and Peter advocated for stricter laws, although he told that no law will bring her back. The trial began on September 17, 2019, at the Old Bailey, one of London's most historic courts. For defendants stood accused: Svensson Onakwy, 19, Aaron Isaacs, 17, Manuel Petrovich, 20, and a 16-year-old boy, unnamed for legal reasons. The courtroom was heavy with emotion. Jody's family, including her dad, Peter, stepmom, Joanne, and sister, Lucy, attended nearly every day, wearing purple ribbons in her memory. The prosecutor asserting that all four defendants played a role in a brutal act of unprovoked violence linked to a turf war. He explained to the jurors that Jody was completely innocent and had been mistakenly identified as a rival by the assailants who normally visited Amy's park. He emphasized damaging evidence, including CCTV footage showing Petrovich's black Vauxhall Corsa near the park, a blood-stained jacket belonging to Svensson, and phone records that connected the group to a premeditated attack. He also referenced a conversation in prison where Petrovich admitted that Svensson intended to target rivals but ended up attacking the wrong people. The prosecutor claimed that Svensson was the person who stabbed Jody, with Aaron enthusiastically supporting him, while Petrovich and the 16-year-old boy assisted in the attack. This was not a spontaneous act, the prosecutor told, highlighting that the group intended to inflict serious harm, making them all responsible for murder under joint enterprise law. The defense teams actively sought to clear their clients of wrongdoing. Charles Sherrard, who represented Svensson, acknowledged that his client was present in the park but denied that he was the one who stabbed Jody. Sherrard pointed to Aaron as the real attacker and argued that Svensson's clothing, a white hoodie and gray tracksuit, did not match the description of a figure dressed in black provided by witnesses. Sarah Forshaw, who defended Petrovich, claimed her client was only a driver and unaware of any violent plans. If Petrovich had known what was going to happen, he would have turned off his phone like Svensson did, she asserted to the jurors. Natasha Wong, representing Aaron, contended that he was merely a runner without any intent to commit violence, denying that he carried a knife or was aware of Svensson's plans. Louise Sweet, who defended the 16-year-old, emphasized his lack of a violent history and urged jurors to view him as a bystander rather than an active participant. Each defense relied on the absence of direct evidence, such as DNA on the knife, in hopes of creating reasonable doubt. After 45 hours of testimony, which included Eddie Coyle's description of the attack and forensic evidence of an 18 centimeters deep wound, the jury deliberated for just over 5 hours. On November 7, 2019, they reached their decision. Svensson Ong-Akwai and Aaron Isaacs were found guilty of murder, while Manuel Petrovich and the 16-year-old were acquitted of all charges. Sentencing took place on November 18, where Judge Wendy Joseph condemned the pathetic location dispute that resulted in Jody's death. Svensson Ong-Akwai, identified as the one who stabbed Jody, received a life sentence with a minimum of 26 years, while Aaron Isaacs, his accomplice, received life with a minimum of 18 years. The courtroom was emotional as impact statements were read. While the verdict offered bittersweet relief to Jody's family, Peter, speaking outside the court, stated he was over the moon about the convictions but heartbroken over his loss. Jody's sister Lucy wrote in her statement, she was only 20 years old, and already she dreaded her life. Joanne believed that Petrovich, as the driver, should have faced consequences, but the family chose to focus on preserving Jody's memory. The Jody Chesney Foundation is actively working to make a difference. They hosted a fundraiser in 2024 that raised £10,000 for workshops aimed at preventing knife crime, as reported on their website. Jody Chesney's life, vibrant and full of promise, was tragically cut short on March 1, 2019, in a senseless act of violence that shook Harold Hill. The convictions of Svensson Ong-Akwai and Aaron Isaacs brought a measure of justice, but no verdict could heal the void left in the hearts of her family and community. Through the Jody Chesney Foundation, her father Peter channels grief into action, raising funds to combat knife crime. Purple ribbons, Jody's favorite color, continue to symbolize her compassion and the collective resolve to honor her memory. Her legacy endures, inspiring a national call to end the scourge of knife crime and ensure no other family endures such loss. Though Jody is gone, her light shines on in every step taken to make communities safer. Addiction can completely dominate a person's mind and will, leading them to engage in disturbing, harmful behaviors. This dependency can stem from various sources, such as alcohol, banned substance, gambling, or even unhealthy relationships, and its impacts can be equally damaging. While some people eventually recognize that they have become trapped by their addictions, many others ignore the problem. Unfortunately, this denial often leads to a worsening situation. The tragic story of Donna Munda and Ghulam Munda is not an isolated case. In 2005, it sent shockwaves through the peaceful town of Hermitage. They was well known and admired by locals, almost like celebrities. Ghulam was a respected physician who owned his clinic, while Donna was exceptionally beautiful and nearly 24 years younger than him. To everyone who knew them, they appeared to have a perfect and successful relationship. However, on a warm day in May, a single gunshot shattered this facade, revealing a much darker reality marked by betrayal, dependency, and greed. Ghulam grew up in the slums of Gujarat, India. From a young age, he faced the harsh realities of poverty and hunger. These tough conditions shaped his strong character, motivated him to escape poverty and create a better life for himself. He worked hard, focused on excellence, and aspiring to become a doctor. After completing high school, Ghulam was accepted into a medical university, where he quickly became one of the top students. His hard work paid off when he was offered an internship at a prestigious clinic in the United States. There, he worked in the urology department and quickly gained a reputation as a promising young specialist with a bright future. After his internship, Ghulam received an attractive job offer and chose to remain in the U.S. He also began applying for U.S. citizenship. By the mid-1970s, he had moved to Hermitage, Pennsylvania, a small town with a population of just over 16,000. There, he opened his own clinic specializing in urological care. His career quickly flourished. Ghulam became a top professional, utilizing advanced technology and the latest equipment in his practice. His clinic gained a reputation as one of the best in the state. He accepted the most difficult and seemingly hopeless cases, attracting patients from both near and far, including overseas. Dr. Ghulam was well respected not only for his medical skills but also for his kindness. He frequently provided free medical care and often paid for expensive medications for patients who couldn't afford them. His compassion was rooted in his own challenging childhood, which motivated him to help others in need. With a prosperous medical practice, Ghulam enjoyed a comfortable lifestyle. He purchased an opulent home in a prestigious area and embraced a life filled with enjoyment. He believed in making the most of life and investing in what made him happy, such as gourmet food, traveling, luxury watches, rare collectibles, high-end cars, and spending time with attractive companions. In his 40s, Ghulam was still single when he noticed a young woman named Donna walking down the street and fell for her immediately. Donna was 24 years younger than him. She came from a religious Catholic family and had just graduated from high school when she met him. At first, she was hesitant about his interest, but over time, she accepted his generous gifts and let him pursue her. Donna's family struggled financially and couldn't afford a prestigious college education. When Ghulam found out about her situation, he offered to pay for her tuition because she wanted to work in healthcare. He supported her journey to become a registered nurse and later funded her master's degree in anesthesiology. Donna and her partner's romantic, Ghulam, relationship started several years after their initial meeting. Interestingly, even though they had strong religious values, Donna's parents accepted their relationship. They appreciated the kind, generous doctor who had helped support their daughter's education and overall well-being. Donna later became a highly skilled nurse anesthetist, secured a job at a prominent medical center. Ghulam continued to encourage her ambitions, supported her career advancement. They lived in Ghulam's luxurious home, where he gave Donna to an expensive car, lavish jewelry, and trips to fancy vacation destinations. When Donna turned 30, Ghulam, who was 54 at the time, proposed to her, and she accepted. They celebrated their engagement with an extravagant wedding ceremony that had over 150 guests, including family, friends, and many of Ghulam's business associates. It appeared that they were on their way to a long, happy life together. Initially, everything seemed perfect. Donna and Ghulam gained fame as local celebrities and were probably the richest people in their town. They enjoyed a luxurious life, traveling frequently, and the doctor generously indulged his much younger wife. They frequently attended charity galas and was always spotted together at public events. Donna chose to prioritize her career and took her time before starting a family. Ghulam supported her decision without any pressure. Many saw Donna as cheerful, friendly, and lively, which was the image she projected, until tragedy started to turn her life upside down. At 37 years old, Donna lost her father after a long illness, which hit her hard. She had always had a close bond with him, referring to herself as a daddy's girl and seeing him as her main source of strength. After he died, Donna became deeply depressed. She isolated herself from others. Ghulam did his best to support her, fulfilling all her wishes, including a trip to Hawaii to help her feel better. However, nothing seemed to work except for antidepressants, which she started taking in larger doses. Donna immersed herself in work, hoping to find solace in her daily routine, but it didn't truly alleviate her suffering. A few years later, she was diagnosed with a kidney condition that caused intense back pain. Even though her husband was a well-known urologist, he couldn't fully relieve her discomfort. The treatments only offered temporary relief, and her symptoms kept coming back, often worse than before. In her desperation, Donna started to rely heavily on strong pain medication. She began secretly taking doses from her workplace, where she was responsible for managing and administering medications. This made it easy for her to take small amounts without being noticed. She would quietly use portions meant for patients, just enough so that no one would realize. Together with her antidepressants, the prescription painkillers dulled her physical and emotional pain. Donna felt abandoned by the world and overwhelmed by her struggles. As a result, she began to distance herself from Ghulam, even though he genuinely cared for her. Things quickly deteriorated. She became increasingly dependent on her medications, to the point where she could not function without them. This led her to raise her dosages and steal more often. Eventually, her behavior attracted attention. She was caught in the act, and there was no way to deny it. Her dismissal from the clinic was shocking, and she faced multiple criminal charges. Ghulam quickly intervened to defend his wife, managed the situation to safeguard her reputation. Thanks to his actions, their friends and family never learned about Donna's problem. Rather than facing jail time, she paid a hefty fine and committed to rehabilitation at a specialized center. Ghulam chose the facility himself and organized Donna's stay, informing relatives, neighbors, and friends that she was on vacation. No one doubted him. He stayed calm, convincing, continued to appear cheerful and friendly. At the rehab center, Donna, who is now in her 40s, met a younger man named Damien Bradford, who was 23 years old. Damien had a history of multiple offenses for distributing illegal substances and ended up in rehab after a serious overdose that almost killed him. Despite their age difference, Donna and Damien quickly became very close, spent a lot of time together. They faced similar challenges. Although their relationship was unexpected, their bond deepened rapidly. What started as simple conversations turned into a passionate affair. Donna's husband was nearing 70 years old. Due to his age and health problems, their physical relationship had significantly diminished. In contrast, Damien was young, energetic, fit, and undeniably attractive. He dedicated a lot of time to the gym, often used steroids and various supplements to maintain his physique. It's unclear why Damien was attracted to a woman 2 decades his senior, but for Donna, he felt like a breath of fresh air, rekindling emotions she thought were long gone. She fully embraced this connection, quickly became emotionally invested. Even though the rehabilitation center had strict rules prohibiting romantic relationships among patients, the two secretly began dating. They found secluded spots to meet, such as storage rooms and restrooms. The thrill of being caught only seemed to strengthen their connection. Donna became so invested in the relationship that she couldn't envision her life without him. Their romance continued after they left the rehab facility. Damien was a caring partner who gave Donna plenty of attention, called her sweet names, and truly enjoyed making her feel valued. He may have developed genuine feelings for Donna, a sophisticated and self-assured woman who clearly looked after herself. At this point, Donna was not working anymore but had complete access to her husband's bank accounts and could spend as she pleased. Ghulam never scrutinized her spending or asked about her expenses. Taking advantage of this, Donna started showering Damien with lavish gifts, designer clothes, and accessories, while also covering all of his living expenses. She even rented a cozy apartment for them to meet privately. As a result, Damien became financially dependent on his wealthy partner, but neither of them appeared to have any concerns about it. When warned about his wife's affair, Ghulam had long suspected that something was off and noticed changes in Donna's behavior, but he had decided not to confront her about it. He realized that she was much younger and had emotional and physical needs that he could no longer fulfill. Gradually, he accepted that their passion had faded. Instead of reacting angrily, he calmly asked Donna if they should consider ending their relationship. Donna was shocked to learn that Ghulam knew about her affair. She explained that it was merely a temporary distraction that happened during a tough period in her life. She had met the younger man while in rehab, when she was feeling vulnerable and needed support. He seemed to understand her struggles better than anyone else. Despite this, she assured Ghulam that he was still the person she loved, promised to end her relationship with the younger man, emphasizing that he didn't truly matter to her. Ghulam felt moved by her words. He chose to trust her, forgave her, and decided they could move forward together as if nothing had happened. Damien had become Donna's overwhelming dependency, which she couldn't easily escape. She felt a strong attraction to him and, in his presence, experienced feelings of youth, desire, and genuine care. Her thoughts were focused on one main goal: eliminating the obstacle to her happiness, her husband. The affair continued at the apartment she had rented for Damien. Although they were more cautious now, Ghulam believed their relationship was over, while Donna planned to maintain it. When they couldn't meet in person, they stayed in constant contact, calling up to 20 times a day and exchanging hundreds of messages. Donna had no plans to let go of her boyfriend. Donna had selfish reasons for not wanting a divorce. She feared losing her financial stability. Before marrying Ghulam, they signed a prenuptial agreement that would limit her settlement to $250,000 if they separated. However, after Ghulam found out about her infidelity, he tried to keep the situation under control and offered to raise her settlement to $1 million. Donna turned down the offer, persuading Ghulam that she still loved him and wished to save their marriage. In reality, though, Ghulam's wealth had increased to nearly $12 million. Motivated by greed, Donna wanted everything, immediate access to wealth so she and Damien could live the way they wanted without restrictions. Every time they met, Donna portrayed Ghulam as a controlling tyrant who emotionally suffocated her and treated her like an object. She wanted Damien to see her husband as an enemy who deserved revenge for the emotional pain he supposedly caused her. Her manipulative stories worked well. A dark plan began to form in Donna's troubled mind, one she intended to execute with the help of her young lover. She believed that since Ghulam was much older and had several chronic health issues, his time was running out anyway. So, she thought, why not hasten the inevitable? To Donna, this seemed like the ideal solution. No one would disrupt her new life, and she would legally inherit all of Ghulam's assets, properties, and wealth as his surviving spouse. She shared her plan with Damien, offering him half of Ghulam's fortune in exchange for his help with a problem. Damien quickly agreed. The promise of a large payout clouded his judgment. Together, they began devising the crime. People who knew Ghulam were aware that he often carried a large amount of cash in his wallet. He frequently joked that anyone who tried to rob him would leave satisfied. Donna and Damien decided to exploit this, planning the crime to appear as a failed mugging that escalated into a tragic event. Developing the plan took nearly 2 months, as Donna and her accomplice carefully considered every detail to avoid mistakes. During this time, Donna portrayed the perfect devoted wife. She stayed close to her husband, accompanied him everywhere, and made sure no one suspected any issues in their marriage. Friends and neighbors genuinely thought they were a happy couple, and even Ghulam was convinced of it. Their initial attempt to execute the plan did not go well. Damien was meant to ambush Ghulam as he left the hospital and headed to his car in the parking lot. However, the area was crowded with people, prompting Damien to back out due to the fear of too many witnesses. It took them another month to devise a new strategy. This time, they aimed to attack on a deserted road where no one would be present to intervene. The plan was straightforward. Damien would follow their car at a safe distance, and Donna would stop at a designated location, pretending there was a medical emergency. They set the date for Friday, May 13, 2005. On that day, Dr. Ghulam planned to visit a neighboring state to look at a house he wanted to buy as a wedding gift for his nephew, Farrokh Munda. Donna offered to go with him, but her 72-year-old mother, Dorothy Smouse, who was visiting at the time, insisted on joining. Donna tried to talk her out of it, but Ghulam didn't see any issue with her coming along and agreed to let his mother-in-law participate. Damien, dressed entirely in black and wearing ski goggles to conceal his identity, waited in his car for a message from Donna indicating that their vehicle had left the house. Once he received the signal, he followed the predetermined route, maintaining a safe distance behind. After stopping to refuel, Donna took over driving to keep control over their timing. While traveling along a deserted highway, she pretended to feel ill and pulled over, claiming she needed to take some medication. At that moment, a black Volkswagen approached from behind. A man in ski goggles jumped out, ran to the passenger side where Ghulam was sitting, pointed a gun at him, and demanded his wallet. Ghulam complied without resistance, handed over his wallet. However, as soon as the attacker received the money, he shot Ghulam in the head and quickly returned to his vehicle, driving away rapidly. Ghulam died instantly from the gunshot. Donna then called emergency services, crying and screaming as she begged them to save her husband. She acted so convincingly like a distraught widow that, at first, no one suspected she could have been involved in the incident. Inconsistencies in the testimonies appeared quickly. Right from the initial interviews, it was evident that something was not right. Donna stated she didn't see the attacker or his vehicle, everything happened too quickly, and she was in shock. In contrast, her mother provided a different account. She claimed she saw both the shooter and the car clearly. According to her, the person who shot her son-in-law was a young black man driving a black Volkswagen. This assertion visibly upset Donna, who argued with her mother, insisting that she must have been mistaken. However, her mother remained firm and began to add more specific details. Donna contended that they had stopped the car because Ghulam requested it, while her mother claimed it was Donna who stopped the car, as illness. Investigators were also puzzled as to why the assailant only targeted one person while leaving two possible witnesses unharmed. 2 days after the incident, Dr. Ghulam's widow held a press conference where she answered reporters' questions with tears in her eyes. She made a heartfelt appeal to the public, urging anyone with information about the case to come forward and help with the investigation. Shortly after the press conference, the police received a phone call from a woman who claimed that Donna was actually the mastermind behind the incident and that she had been assisted by her lover, Damien Bradford. The caller also provided details such as the make and license plate number of Damien's car, as well as his home address. This caller considered herself to be Damien's fiancée. She had been closely monitoring the couple and shared all the information she had gathered. On the same day, police arrested Damien and searched his apartment. Although he had managed to get rid of the weapon, for some unknown reason, he kept the victim's wallet and brought it home. Inside the wallet, they found about $3,000 in cash, several bank cards belonging to Dr. Ghulam, and a photo of Donna. Authorities also discovered clothes with small blood stains that matched the doctor's. Damien was arrested and taken into custody. He mistakenly believed that his wealthy lover would help him and somehow secure his release. However, Donna, fearing for her own safety, chose to stay silent, hoping that all the blame would fall on Damien, especially since the evidence against him was overwhelming. When prosecutors told Damien that he might face the death penalty, he decided to cooperate with them in exchange for a shorter sentence. He disclosed the entire plan, provided text messages and documents, including evidence that Donna had purchased the car he was driving. In July 2007, Damien pleaded guilty to the crime and testified in court, explaining all the details of the scheme. Because he cooperated, he was sentenced to 17.5 years in prison. Donna was eventually sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole on September 21, 2007, for the murder for hire conviction, with an additional 360 months to run concurrently on the remaining charges. Despite Donna's numerous appeals, the court upheld the original sentence. She is currently serving her sentence at the Tallahassee Federal Correctional Institution in Tallahassee, Florida. After being released on supervised release in 2020, Damien Bradford was arrested again on July 29, 2022, following an altercation with state police at the Franklin Mini Mart in Aliquippa. During his struggle with an officer, Bradford fired a shot at the officer, hitting him in the leg. Damien was convicted of attempted murder and aggravated assault on the officer, sentenced to 36.5 to 73 years in state prison in November 2023. In December of that year, the district court added a consecutive 10-year sentence for violating the terms of his supervised release. As of press time, Damien is serving his sentence at the Albion State Correctional Institution, located in Albion, Pennsylvania. The murder of Dr. Ghulam Munda on May 13, 2005, shattered the illusion of a perfect life in Hermitage, Pennsylvania, exposing a chilling tale of addiction and betrayal. Donna Munda, 23 years younger than her devoted husband, succumbed to a dependency on painkillers and an obsessive affair with Damien Bradford, leading her to orchestrate Ghulam's death for his $12 million estate. Ghulam's kindness and medical legacy endure in the community's memory, marked by tributes in 2025, while his tragic end serves as a stark warning of addiction's power to corrupt and destroy, urging greater vigilance to prevent such devastations. On a cold February afternoon in Wenatchee, Washington, 17-year-old Mackenzie Cowell stepped outside from her beauty school for a break, but she didn't inform anyone of her absence plan. She vanished without a trace. Hours later, her locked car was discovered in a secluded canyon away from town. There was only one set of footprints leading away into the snow. No one knew her whereabouts or what had occurred. What began as a missing person investigation quickly escalated into a more troubling situation. In the quiet town of Wenatchee, Washington, 17-year-old Mackenzie Cowell was recognized as a lively and dedicated young woman with a promising future. She managed her time between the homes of her divorced parents while preparing for high school graduation. In addition to her academic responsibilities, Mackenzie was also pursuing her dream of becoming a hairstylist by attending the Academy of Hair Design. Her life was busy, filled with early mornings, long days, and evenings spent dancing with her school's performance group, the Applettes, or participating in local modeling events. Mackenzie had faced challenges, including years of bullying because of her prominent underbite, which she hoped to correct with surgery. Nevertheless, she approached life with resilience. Her growing self-confidence was admired by both friends and family. Her father, Reed Cowell, often praised her relentless drive and determination. Her each day began before sunrise and extended well into the night. At that time, Mackenzie was in a close relationship with Joaquin Villazano, and they were nearly inseparable. Everything seemed to be going well until the events of February 9, 2010, changed everything. That evening, Mackenzie planned to have dinner with her father. It was meant to be a rare break in her busy schedule. When she didn't call after school, as she usually did, Reed quickly became worried. By 8 p.m., just as the family was about to report her missing, the police called first. They had found Mackenzie's car, a 2000 Pontiac Grand Prix, abandoned near Mission Ridge, about 40 miles from her home in Orondo. The surroundings were dark, isolated, and covered in snow. The car was locked. Cowell's wallet and some of her clothes were found in the car, although her debit card and mobile phone were missing. Only a pair of footprints were found at the scene, according to police, indicating that she had been alone when it was left there. The search for Mackenzie started right away. Bloodhounds, helicopters, and volunteers searched the steep and rugged area near where her car was discovered, but they found no clues. Although her case was classified as a missing person case with a risk of death, it did not initiate an Amber Alert. However, the local community and soon the entire nation became aware of her disappearance. Mackenzie's face was featured on news channels, and the FBI sent agents to assist local detectives. Everyone was eager for answers, but the situation was confusing. Mackenzie had never run away before. She was well-liked, responsible, and had strong ties to her family and community. At approximately 3 p.m. on February 9, 2010, she was last seen on surveillance video leaving the Hair Design Academy, walking to her car, and driving away. She told her classmates that she would be back in less than 15 minutes. Around this time, she sent a text message to her boyfriend saying, "Hey, what's up?" This was the last time she was known to have used her phone. After that, there was no further communication from her, making that text the last digital trace of her. Her debit card remained unused in the days that followed. Witnesses soon began to report their observations. Several residents near Mission Ridge stated they saw a tall, slim man with dark hair wearing a long coat walking alone around the time when Mackenzie's car was believed to have been abandoned, between 4:30 and 5:30 p.m. The police then focused on Mackenzie's phone records, examining thousands of messages, calls, and social media activities from platforms like Facebook and MySpace. However, despite the large amount of information, they could not find a clear lead. Detectives did not consider it a runaway case. For 3 days, her family, friends, and investigators remained hopeful, distributing flyers, searching the area where her abandoned car was found, and pursuing every potential lead. However, their hope turned to heartbreak. On the afternoon of February 13th, Mackenzie's body was discovered by a passerby on the banks of the Columbia River near Quincy, Washington, in a resort community about 32 kilometers from Wenatchee. She was found fully clothed, with her feet in the water. A vacant home for sale is located about 46 meters from where her body was found. The scene was eerie and unsettling. While authorities kept many details secret, what was revealed was alarming. Mackenzie had been beaten, stabbed, and strangled. There were no banned substance or alcohol in her system. Although she had not been abused, there was an attempt to dismember her after death. Her arm was partially cut off, and a serrated knife was found in her shoulder. Nearby, duct tape was discovered on the ground. Dive teams returned to search the riverbank, expanding their efforts to neighboring counties to gather clues. Detectives acknowledged they had no clear suspects. Mackenzie could have been targeted by someone she knew or by a stranger. Her death shocked the community. As news spread through schools and neighborhoods, about 1,800 people attended Cowell's memorial service, which was held at the Toyota Town Center in Wenatchee on February 25. The FBI increased its involvement in the case by forming a special task force. Investigators began their inquiry by interviewing people close to Mackenzie, including her boyfriend, Joaquin Villazano, and her mother's boyfriend, Joey Fisher. Although Joey appeared distressed and reportedly failed a lie detector test. It was noted that Joey had an argument with Mackenzie the day before her disappearance, but there was no evidence linking him to her death. Then, both Joaquin and Joey were later completely cleared by the police. As time passed, detectives pursued numerous leads. One notable tip came from Liz Reed, who is a college student, police informant, and former drug lord. Reed told the police that two banned substance lords, Sam Cuevas and Emmanuel Serros, had killed Mackenzie in a case of mistaken identity. The two men reportedly believed that Mackenzie was a banned substance lord. Reed claimed that she had seen a snuff film about the murder, and Cuevas admitted to her that he choked Mackenzie to keep her quiet. Reed was able to describe the murder weapon before it was made public and provided the police with a ring that she claimed belonged to Mackenzie. She stated that Serros had sent her to the murder scene to find the ring. None of the Cowell family members recognized the ring as belonging to Mackenzie. Reed later retracted her claim. As a result, the police began to doubt Reed's credibility. Cuevas and Serros were questioned by the police and presented alibis, witness statements, and phone records showing that they were elsewhere on the day Mackenzie went missing. After encountering this setback, investigators continued their work. They pursued over 750 tips and conducted more than 800 interviews, collecting DNA samples from dozens of individuals. Despite their efforts, they were unable to identify the person responsible. For several months, Mackenzie's mother chose to stay silent out of respect for the ongoing investigation. However, as time passed without any leads, she felt compelled to go public, urging anyone with information, no matter how trivial it might seem, to come forward. The case took a new direction when a fresh informant stepped forward. After receiving some information, police began focusing their investigation on Christopher Scott Wilson. Christopher had previously attacked a woman at a party, choking her violently for no reason before acting as if nothing had occurred. At 29 years old, Christopher had attended the same hair design academy as Mackenzie and lived just a few blocks away from it. Those who knew him described Christopher as quiet and polite, but also strange. Simultaneously, police received a letter in August claiming that Christopher had an obsession with death, corpses, and serial killers. One of his schoolmates told police that Christopher had said he used to work at funeral homes and that he liked cutting people up, which raised concerns in light of the violent details surrounding Mackenzie's murder. One mentioned that he bragged about cutting people up while handling bodies, and another remembered him claiming he had strangled someone with a belt during a hotel encounter. Despite these alarming stories, those close to him defended him. His mother argued that being different did not make her son dangerous, while his best friend described him as kind and generous, suggesting he was simply misunderstood. Christopher stood out for more reasons than just his looks. He was at the academy on the same day Mackenzie vanished and left through the same back door just 2 minutes after her. After that, it became difficult to track his movements. He did send a few texts to his ex-girlfriend, but nobody could confirm his location that afternoon. He had no prior criminal record, and when the police questioned him, he claimed he didn't know Mackenzie at all. He even agreed to give a DNA sample, which turned out to be a major mistake. DNA from duct tape found near Mackenzie's body matched Christopher. When faced with the DNA match and questioned about his presence in the area, Christopher completely denied being there. Upon learning that his DNA was found at the crime scene, he asked for a lawyer, and the interview concluded. Investigators found it significant that Christopher was obsessed with Dexter, a fictional character known for dismembering his victims, which mirrored the injuries on Mackenzie's body. Along with the DNA evidence and the odd timing of when he left the academy, this provided enough reason to arrest him. After 8 months of uncertainty, police arrested Christopher Wilson. Although he had no connection to Mackenzie other than being classmates and had attended her memorial service to support friends, he was now in custody, charged with her murder. As detectives investigated his apartment and devices, the case took a more disturbing turn. A large discolored stain on the carpet was found to be Mackenzie's blood, contradicting Christopher's assertion that it was just spilled water. Authorities confirmed she had been killed in his home, but how she ended up there was still unclear. Mackenzie's father maintained that his daughter would never go anywhere with someone she didn't trust. Did she have more interactions with Christopher at school than anyone suspected? Was she manipulated or forced? No one could definitively answer these questions. On October 6th, Christopher was arrested on suspicion of second-degree murder and taken into custody on a $1 million bond. He pleaded not guilty to the charges against him. His court appearance attracted a very emotional crowd. His mother was in tears as he walked in, and many of his supporters firmly believed he was innocent. Among them were young women who had known Christopher personally and found it hard to accept that he could commit such a violent act. However, Mackenzie's friends and family felt that the doubts about Christopher's guilt were a painful reminder of the tragedy they faced. A close friend of Mackenzie emphasized to the public that Mackenzie was the real victim. She did not choose to be abducted, murdered, and thrown away by the Columbia River. She was a lively teenager with a bright future ahead of her. In December, the Cowell Task Force made a second arrest. Wilson's friend Tessa M. Schuleman was accused, but never charged, of helping Wilson cover up the crime. Instead, she was charged with obstruction of justice in an unrelated case. Detectives claimed that there were multiple photos found on Christopher's computer of Schuleman posing as a dead person at the spot in Christopher's apartment where Cowell's blood was found. Schuleman claimed that she did not know about the blood and that Christopher had told her to pose there. Investigators continued their work by submitting additional evidence to the lab and interviewing people connected to Christopher. However, they struggled to identify a motive for the crime. Some individuals involved in the case speculated that Mackenzie had been an easy target for someone mentally unstable. As the legal proceedings intensified, Christopher's defense team, led by prominent attorney John Henry Brown, previously associated with the notorious Ted Bundy, took aggressive measures to exclude critical evidence from the trial. Eventually, a judge decided that prosecutors could not present information about Wilson's work at local funeral homes or mention his Hannibal Lecter tattoo. The defense also introduced conspiracy theories, claiming that law enforcement had planted Mackenzie's blood in Wilson's apartment. They revisited a previous theory that implicated two men, Sam and Emmanuel, who had been accused by informant Liz Reed. Christopher's mother supported these theories, believing her son had been wrongfully accused. The defense pointed out that there was no DNA evidence connecting Christopher to Mackenzie's car or the knife found with her body. They also cast doubt on the authenticity of a ring that Liz claimed belonged to Mackenzie, noting the poor quality of the photos and that Mackenzie's family and friends did not recognize it. Nevertheless, the prosecutors grew more confident in their case. Christopher's charges were elevated to first-degree murder because they believed Mackenzie's death was planned. If found guilty, he could face up to 26 years in prison. In April 2011, a plea deal was offered to Christopher, a 6-year sentence for manslaughter. Initially, he declined the offer, insisting that he was innocent. Many were surprised by his decision since the evidence against him was strong and the plea deal seemed quite generous. As the trial date neared, Christopher changed his mind and wanted to accept the plea deal, citing jury survey results that indicated he might not get a fair trial. However, by then, the 6-year offer was no longer available. Mackenzie's family also asked Christopher to write a formal statement acknowledging his actions. In court, he read aloud, "He also recklessly caused the death of Mackenzie Cowell by strangulation and by stabbing her with a knife." When asked if this statement was true, he replied, "Yes." Despite this, he later claimed that his statement was false, stating he had only agreed to it to secure a plea deal. He continued to assert that he had been framed. Wilson ultimately pleaded guilty to first-degree manslaughter, first-degree robbery for stealing Mackenzie's phone, and assault in a different case. In May 2012, he was sentenced to 14 years and 3 months in prison but received credit for the time he had already served. After the hearing, in a heartfelt moment, the families of Mackenzie and Wilson embraced and exchanged apologies, showing a rare moment of compassion amidst the heartbreak of the case. Later, Christopher Scott Wilson tried to withdraw his guilty plea through the Washington Court of Appeals, but his appeal was unsuccessful. After serving 11.5 years, he was released from the Monroe Correctional Center on December 11, 2023 at the age of 43. Mackenzie Cowell, however, never lived past 17. In her short life, she left behind a legacy of determination, kindness, and ambition. Her bedroom remains nearly untouched, serving as a quiet tribute to the life she was creating. Her father, Reed Cowell, has placed a wind chime outside their home. When it jingles in the breeze, he feels as if he is hearing his daughter speak again. Mackenzie was his special gift from God, he says. Mackenzie will never leave his heart. Many children enjoy attending summer camps, going on trips, or even traveling abroad. These experiences allow them to discover new places and broaden their understanding of the world. However, sometimes these adventures can take a dark turn, leading to serious situations. During the summer, Brittany in France is a beautiful destination and generally considered safe, attracting thousands of schoolchildren from various countries each year. The same was true in 1996. In mid-July, a group of students from Cornwall, England, arrived in France, including a girl named Caroline Dickinson. She was one of 40 children on the trip, accompanied by 5 teachers. At 13 years old, Caroline was an average student. This was her first trip to another European country. She was excited but felt a bit down about going without her friend, and her mother had asked the teacher to look out for her. Nevertheless, Caroline quickly connected with the other children and traveled with the group to a small village named Plain Fougers of Brittany. The trip organizers had arranged for the students' accommodation at a youth hostel. Plain Fougers had only a few shops and bars, with a population of just over 3,000 people. This small, quaint village excited Caroline, as it was her first time visiting such a cozy place. After moving into the hostel for foreign guests on July 18, 1996, Caroline enjoyed making new friends and quickly became close to a girl named Camilla. Unfortunately, they were assigned to different rooms. Camilla's room had 2 bunk beds, both of which were already occupied. Not wanting to go back to her own room, Caroline decided to bring her mattress into Camilla's room. She placed it on the floor between the 2 large beds and chose to spend the night there. Before going to sleep, Camilla and Caroline talked for a long time. The last thing Camilla remembers is singing a song about the stars with Caroline before they both fell asleep. The next morning, when the girls in the room woke up, they found Caroline lying on the floor in an unnatural position, her eyes wide open. They called her name, but she didn't respond. She was already cold. A scream of horror filled the room, drawing the attention of the teachers, who rushed in and were stunned by the sight. They immediately contacted the police. When the gendarmes arrived, they concluded that it was a murder, and the girl had died under horrific circumstances. The entire community of Plain Fougers was left in shock by the tragedy. The event was so traumatic that many found it hard to discuss. Caroline had been abused, and she died from asphyxia caused by a lump of cotton wool lodged deep in her throat, which led to her suffocation. Caroline was known for her diligence. She worked hard and excelled academically. The incident shocked not only the families of the children but also the entire French village, which had never experienced anything like it. The crime had many strange aspects. Most notably, it was hard to understand how the criminal could sneak into a room full of 5 sleeping children and kill one without waking the others. How did he manage to enter the dormitory without being seen by teachers or security? Detectives soon figured out that an outsider could gain access to the building. Fire safety regulations at the time required that entrances and exits remain open, and some were left unmonitored. This meant that anyone could easily enter the building through these doors. After the girls who shared a room with Caroline recovered from the tragedy, the police were finally able to interview them. 2 witnesses reported seeing something unusual that night. One girl woke up in the middle of the night, heard quiet moans, and noticed Caroline's legs twitching. However, she thought her roommate was just having a nightmare and decided not to investigate further. Another girl also woke up around the same time and saw a shadow move across the room toward the exit. She assumed it was one of the other girls going to the bathroom. There were no screams or anything else alarming that would have drawn anyone's attention. A development built on witness testimonies that, on the night of July 18th, Caroline chose to sleep on the floor between her friends' bunk beds so she could be close to them. Around 4 a.m., an unknown man entered the dormitory through an unlocked door. He went upstairs and found Caroline asleep on the floor. He placed a large wad of cotton in her mouth, likely to silence her, then assaulted and abused her. After killing her, he left the scene. At that same time, one of the teachers was awakened by a suspicious noise and looked out the dormitory window. She saw a stranger riding away on a motorcycle but thought he was just passing by. After seeing the stranger, she checked the sleeping areas but didn't notice anything unusual. All the children appeared to be sleeping peacefully. She chose not to turn on the lights or wake anyone, believing there was no reason to do so, and returned to her bed. The murder investigation was carried out quietly, with minimal information released. This approach was in stark contrast to similar cases in England, where press conferences were held, and the public was actively engaged to help gather information. With no new information, it appeared that the case had hit a dead end. After all required examinations, the body of Caroline was returned to her parents in England. Many people attended her funeral, hoping the criminal would be caught soon. Unfortunately, in the months that followed, no suspects emerged. The investigation stalled, and even after a year, there was still no progress. Many criticized the French police for their poor handling of the case and lack of professionalism. Caroline's parents, John and Sue, and their daughter Jenny, had made the harrowing journey to France. They returned to the small village in Brittany on the anniversary of his daughter's death. He was frustrated by the detectives' lack of communication and their failure to engage the public in the investigation. He made a public appeal for help, urging the local community to remember the tragic events surrounding the death of his 13-year-old daughter. John called on residents to share any information they might have about the case, hoping to find the person responsible. Caroline's father were astonished to find out that no fingerprints had been collected from the crime scene. In the early stages of the investigation, officers simply went door to door to talk to local residents. However, the lead detective refused to collect DNA samples from all the men in the village, even though the number of men was small. This refusal seemed unreasonable, especially given the specific nature of the killer's actions. John believed that the perpetrator lived nearby, was familiar with the area, and could easily come and go without being noticed. As John examined the French police procedures more closely, their frustration grew. In the end, he decided to reach out to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to request pressure on the French authorities for a more comprehensive investigation. Thanks to the campaign he initiated, his request was approved in August 1997, which led to significant media pressure on the gendarmes. This situation even resulted in the dismissal of the detectives who were responsible for the initial investigation in France. The new lead detective quickly concentrated on the early mistakes made in the case. They chose to reassess the limited evidence and review most of the information. However, with over a year having passed since the murder, this task proved to be quite challenging. Key witnesses were interviewed again, and based on their statements, a new composite sketch of the suspected killer was created. All information was made public promptly to prevent the same mistakes from happening again. The court also approved the victim's parents' request for DNA testing of all the men in the town where their daughter was killed. This was the first mass DNA testing conducted in the history of forensic science in Britain. Caroline's father had previously believed that the attacker was a local resident, but the testing ultimately revealed no matches. investigators were compelled to adopt new strategies and consider events beyond the village. During this process, a new detective uncovered a troubling link to an incident in the nearby village of St. Lenaire. On the night Caroline Dickinson was murdered, an unknown man had entered a youth hostel in St. Lenaire where students were staying. The intruder entered a room where 4 teenagers were sleeping but was quickly spotted. Lights were turned on, causing chaos that forced him to flee. Following a failed abuse attempt in a field, the suspect had allegedly traveled 25 kilometers in search of a new victim. Unfortunately, this crucial lead was overlooked during the initial investigation, as no one was harmed in this incident, resulting in very few details about the man. Detectives focused on the 4 witnesses from the youth hostel who had seen the likely assailant clearly in the light. Once located and interviewed, their insights helped refine a composite sketch of the suspect. As details about the mysterious abuser circulated across France, authorities alerted all youth hostels and dormitories about the situation. They also collected information on similar crimes from comparable organizations. Although data was scarce, the number of potential suspects gradually increased. By the end of 1997, approximately 3,000 local men were identified as possible offenders. To definitively determine the killer's identity, all must undergo testing and DNA profiling. This extensive process took nearly 2 years, as investigators treated the case with utmost seriousness. After some time, investigators repeatedly encountered the name Francisco Arce Montes. He is a 47-year-old Spanish citizen with a long history of criminal activity across several European countries. His first arrest was in Germany during the 1980s, where he received a 5-year sentence for abuse. Following that, he carried out an attack in the Netherlands, resulting in a few months of imprisonment. In 1994, he was arrested in France for attempting to assault a girl at a youth hostel. His appearance matched the composite sketch created from witness descriptions. Upon examining his criminal history, detectives discovered at least 10 similar incidents across Europe, all involving the abuse of girls and teenagers in youth hostels. Unfortunately, tracking him down proved difficult since he was a migrant, continuously moving between countries and making it possible for him to be anywhere in Europe or beyond. By the end of the 1990s, Francisco had gained notoriety among law enforcement agencies throughout Europe. He emerged as the prime suspect among the various candidates. To focus solely on him and rule out the others, it was essential to apprehend Francisco and obtain a DNA sample from him. Meanwhile, testing continued, and gradually, the list of 3,000 suspects was narrowed down, eliminating individuals one by one. Francisco managed to evade capture so effectively that, at one point, even the victim's parents began to question if he would ever be found. In March, a group of Irish students went on vacation and stayed at a youth hostel near the beach. That evening, an unknown man entered one of their rooms, but 2 female students caught him. He insisted he had entered the wrong room by mistake and quickly left. Although the girls were worried about what had happened, they chose not to report the incident, assuming the man was simply confused because he was drunk. The next day, this man was seen in the same hostel. He was found in one of the rooms and acting suspiciously around 2 a.m. Shortly after, he left, claiming he had confused the rooms. 4 girls who witnessed this immediately called emergency services to report a break-in and an abuse. One of the girls stated that she had been abused while she slept. She provided her underwear for examination and consented to all necessary tests. The police caught the mysterious criminal after one of the Irish students recognized him the following day. The girl was in the room that was broken into yesterday and noticed the suspicious man walking around the pool as if nothing had happened. She immediately called 911, and he was arrested. He was taken to the Miami Beach Police Department for questioning. The man denied being involved in the suspicious activities at the youth hostel over the past few days. During his interview with law enforcement, he eventually provided his real name, Francisco Montes. He claimed to be a solo traveler who had spent considerable time in South America and European countries, including Germany and France, and was currently traveling around the United States. During his conversation with the detectives, he made several strange, claiming he hadn't committed any crime and that he had merely entered other people's rooms by accident while drunk. Francisco repeatedly asked, in anger, whether masturbation was illegal in the United States, suggesting that his actions weren't harmful. His behavior was both provocative and odd. He ultimately took a DNA test and was held for further investigation. By this time, Caroline's murder had gone cold, until Tommy Onko, an immigration officer at the Detroit airport, picked up a British newspaper and read a story about the 5th anniversary of the unsolved murder. The article named Montez as a possible suspect, and on a whim, Onko decided to look up immigration information to see if a man by that name had ever been to the United States. He found the name of Francisco Arce Montez, who was in fact in police custody in Miami Beach. Onko contacted French and British authorities and was able to confirm Francisco's date of birth and hometown. Meanwhile, Montez was arrested in Miami Beach for abusing an Irish tourist at a youth hostel. The crime was similar to the modus operandi in Caroline's case, with Montez being able to enter the girls' rooms without waking the victim or her roommate. Francisco was arrested by Sergeant, later Major, Angel Vasquez of the Miami Beach Police Department. Major Vasquez obtained a DNA sample from Montez, which matched the DNA from the male fluid at the Irish students' youth hostel. In addition, Major Vasquez linked Montez to 4 other similar incidents in Miami Beach. Combined with Onko's sources, investigators linked Francisco to Caroline's murder. Francisco's DNA was later matched to DNA from the Caroline Dickinson murder investigation. The state of Florida suspended charges against Francisco to allow for his extradition to France to face charges for Caroline's murder. Finally, there was a genuine possibility of solving Caroline's murder. The major obstacle was the distance. At any moment, Francisco could be released on bail and vanish, traveling anywhere in the world. They began communicating with detectives in France through the former consul. Their concerns were finally alleviated when they received confirmation of Francisco's name and date of birth, which matched the information held by French authorities. It was discovered that Francisco had traveled around Europe before coming to the United States, where he was working as a truck driver. In March 2001, Francisco was arrested in Florida and identified as the main suspect in the murder of Caroline Dickinson, which occurred in France 5 years earlier. At this point, the young women who had been attacked in Miami recognized Francisco as the intruder who had broken into their dorm rooms, enabling the authorities to detain him. DNA from bodily fluids found on Caroline's body was sent to France for testing to confirm a match. This was a critical moment for European investigators and Caroline's parents. A few days later, the test results revealed an almost 100% match. Francisco Montez was extradited from the United States to France after 6 months, and it took another 2 years for him to confess to his crimes. He admitted to abusing a 13-year-old girl in France but claimed that Caroline Dickinson's death was accidental. Francisco argued that he had a mental illness, which he believed made him unaccountable for his actions. However, his attempt to avoid punishment due to insanity was unsuccessful. Experts concluded he was sane and capable of standing trial following several assessments. During the trial, he rarely spoke, mostly in Spanish, and appeared calm, showing no remorse for his actions. He was required to testify, and Francisco explained in French how the murder occurred. He stated that the defendant had traveled from Rennes to Plain Fougers with plans to return to England, where he was residing at the time. After getting lost, he sought a place to stay for the night and found the only building in the small village with its lights on, a youth hostel. He entered at night and saw that everyone was asleep. He began to check the rooms and noticed Caroline sleeping on the floor, whom he viewed as an easy target. Francisco approached her, covered her mouth with his hand, and then assaulted her. He ended up abusing her and accidentally killed her with a piece of cotton wool that suffocated her. Panicked, he fled the scene. During the trial, Francisco asked the victim's parents for forgiveness, acknowledging he knew the Dickinson family will never forgive him. The parents of Caroline, who were divorced at the time, along with their youngest daughter, attended the trial and provided testimony. They described their daughter as an innocent girl who wanted to explore the world and travel to different countries. This trip was a step towards fulfilling her dream. The parents had allowed Caroline to go on the trip without any concerns, believing that France was a safe place and that she would be supervised by her teachers. Caroline and her classmates were scheduled to visit various interesting sites. No one could have predicted the tragic outcome of this journey. Had they known, they would never have permitted their daughter to go. They did not forgive the criminal. During the trial, details about the defendant's life were uncovered. His mental health issues began in his teenage years when he started showing symptoms of obsessive-compulsive disorder. He was fixated on cleanliness, using a handkerchief to open doors and turn on lights, avoiding touching anything with his bare hands, meticulously washing everything with mineral water and soap multiple times. At the age of 20, Francisco started experiencing difficulties. After his friends learned about this, they sent him to a psychiatrist, who diagnosed him with depression and progressive schizophrenia. In the mid-1970s, he left Spain and traveled across Europe. He lived a transient lifestyle, working as a waiter, hotel doorman, or driver, but primarily relied on money from his father. An acquaintance noted that Francisco was very familiar with all the youth hostels in Europe and often sought the company of girls, particularly those aged 11 to 12, considering anyone over 20 to be too old for him. His friend also recalled a chilling admission from Francisco, where he expressed that he saw nothing wrong with killing a person. At one point, he had a girlfriend whom he physically abused. She bore him a son but eventually left him due to the violence. Afterward, he went on another trip where he continued to assault and abuse women. On June 14, 2004, following a 3-week trial, Francisco Arce Montes was found guilty of murdering and abusing Caroline Dickinson. He was sentenced to 30 years in prison. The victim's parents felt a sense of relief, believing that their 8 years of waiting for justice and their activism had led to the conviction of their daughter's murderer. However, the situation did not end there. After 20 years, he filed an appeal but later withdrew it. Everyone was shocked by the long list of offenses, which took around 10 minutes to read. Over the 20 years before receiving a life sentence, he committed 4 abuses in Germany. South American authorities also believe he abused at least a dozen women within their borders, in addition to attacking many others. Additionally, there was one attempted abuse in France before Caroline's death. It's evident that the true extent of his crimes could have been much larger, but the trial only considered officially recorded cases where victims had reported to the police. Notably, all the other victims survived. Caroline may have been the only one who did not survive after being abused. U.S. detectives investigating his case believe he is linked to a series of abuses and murders in both the U.S. and Europe. His conviction has led to serious questions about why he was not apprehended sooner. He could have been arrested in Spain as early as autumn 1997, a year after Caroline's murder, yet he avoided capture. The lack of cooperation among law enforcement agencies across European countries hindered the process of transferring him to the French gendarmerie. The parents of the victim were troubled by this as well. Despite Francisco's conviction, the victim's mother and father continued to voice their frustration about the insufficient collaboration between international authorities, which allowed criminals to keep committing offenses without facing consequences. The parents of Caroline pushed for the establishment of an international DNA database to help address the situation. Throughout their advocacy, they frequently shared their daughter's story. This case highlighted the importance of collaboration among law enforcement agencies, even across different continents, in stopping dangerous criminals. Francisco's legal troubles continued after Caroline's case. The last people heard from Francisco in 2015, when he was convicted of abusing a young woman, a year after he had killed Caroline. He was extradited to Spain to face charges for the abuse of an 18-year-old girl. He deceived her into allowing him into her apartment building by pretending he had lost his keys. Once inside, he threatened her with a knife and abused her. For this crime, he was extradited and tried in Spain, where he was sentenced to 11 years in prison. He is expected to serve his jail time in Spain once he has been released from prison in France, where he is scheduled to stay until January 2027. Francisco has nearly run out of options for appealing his sentence. His earliest opportunity for release will be in 2038. However, it is improbable that he will live to see his 88th birthday while imprisoned.